The moment I finally landed my dream job should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, I found myself screaming into my steering wheel in the parking lot of Morgan Stanley, mascara running down my face, while my mother's words echoed in my head. "Oh, honey, I sold Cooper. But don't worry, I got us both tickets for a Caribbean cruise. My name is Hadley, and I just became the youngest financial analyst in my division. The promotion I'd been working towards for 3 years finally came through, and all I wanted was to go home and celebrate with my best friend in the whole world, my golden retriever, Cooper. He'd been there through every late night of studying, every rejection letter, every moment of doubt. "This isn't happening," I whispered, fumbling for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial Pearl's number. "Hey, superstar, how's the first day going?" Pearl's cheerful voice came through the speaker. "She sold him," my voice cracked. "My mother sold Cooper." "She did what?" Pearl's tone shifted instantly from celebration to rage. "Tell me everything, now!" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. She called during my lunch break, all excited about some cruise deal she got from her friend Stephen. Said she needed quick cash for the deposit, and since I was always too busy with work to properly care for a dog anyway, she did me a favour and sold him. "Oh my God, Hadley, that's not just crossing a line, that's obliterating it. Where is Cooper now?" "I don't know," I choked out. "She won't tell me who bought him. Says it's for the best if I don't try to contact them." My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Don't forget dinner tonight, celebrating your promotion and our upcoming cruise." "I can't believe she expects me to celebrate with her," I said to Pearl, "like she didn't just sell my dog without my permission." "Then don't," Pearl said firmly. "Come to my place instead. We'll figure this out." "I have to confront her," I replied, wiping my eyes. "I need to know who has Cooper." "Want me to come with you?" "No, I need to do this alone." I started my car. "But can you be on standby?" "Always. And Hadley, don't let her twist this around. She's wrong, and what she did is illegal." I drove to my mother's house, the same house I grew up in, with its perfectly manicured lawn and gleaming windows. My mother, Michelle, opened the door, wearing her signature pearls and a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "There's my successful girl." She went in for a hug, but I stepped back. "Where's Cooper?" I demanded. "Oh, honey, we've been through this. He went to a lovely family with 3 children. He'll be so much happier there." She waved dismissively. "Now come see the cruise itinerary." "Mum, Cooper was my dog. I paid for him. I trained him. His microchip is in my name. What you did is theft." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. I'm your mother. Everything you have is because of me. Besides, you're far too busy for a dog now. Stephen got us an amazing deal on this cruise, and—" "I don't care about the cruise," I shouted, surprising us both. "I want my dog back." "Lower your voice," she hissed, glancing at the neighbours' houses. "You're making a scene." "Good. Maybe the neighbours should know what you did. Maybe everyone should know how you sold your daughter's dog for cruise tickets." "I did you a favour," she said, her voice taking on that familiar condescending tone. "You'll thank me later. Now, are you coming in for dinner or not?" I stared at her, really seeing her for the first time. The perfectly coiffed hair, the expensive clothes, the practiced smile. It was all a facade hiding something ugly underneath. "No," I said quietly. "I'm not coming in, but I want you to know something, Mum. I'm going to find Cooper, and when I do, you're going to regret ever thinking you could get away with this." Her smile faltered slightly. "Don't threaten me, Hadley. It's not becoming." "It's not a threat," I replied, turning to leave. "It's a promise." As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. "You're being childish. Call me when you've calmed down." I deleted the message and called Pearl instead. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Remember that time in college when you said I should stand up to my mother more?" "Yeah? Well, I'm ready now, and I'm going to need your help." "Your mother did the exact same thing with your college fund," Pearl said, sliding a glass of wine across her kitchen counter to me. "Remember? She used it for that spa retreat in Arizona." I took a long sip, memories flooding back. "Yeah, but that was different. I had scholarships by then." "It's not different," Pearl insisted, pulling out her laptop. "It's a pattern. She takes what matters to you and turns it into something for herself, and we're going to prove it." I'd been at Pearl's apartment for hours, trying to piece together a plan to find Cooper. The sun had long since set, and my phone was filled with ignored texts from my mother. "First things first," Pearl said, typing furiously. "Cooper's microchip. You said it's registered to you." "Yes, but no buts. That's our leverage." She spun the laptop toward me. "Look up the registry, report him as stolen." As I logged into the pet microchip website, my phone rang. It was Caden, my new boss. "Hadley, sorry to call so late, but I noticed you seemed off during the afternoon meeting. Everything okay?" I glanced at Pearl, who nodded encouragingly. "Actually, no. My mother sold my dog without my permission today. I'm trying to get him back." There was a pause. That's actually illegal. Do you need some time off to sort this out?" "No," I said quickly. "Work is the only normal thing I have right now, but thank you." After hanging up, Pearl was grinning. "See, even your boss thinks your mum is crazy. Now tell me about this Stephen person. The one with the cruise tickets?" "He owns the cruise line. Mum met him at some charity gala last year. They've been friends ever since." I made air quotes around the word friends. Perfect. Pearl opened a new browser tab. "Let's see what we can find about him." As she searched, my phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Stephen says he can upgrade us to a suite if we book by tomorrow. Don't throw away this opportunity because of a dog." "God, she's unbelievable," I muttered, showing Pearl the text. "Wait a minute." Pearl squinted at her screen. "Stephen Rose. Isn't he the one who got caught in that scandal with the charity funds last year?" "What scandal?" "It was all over the local news. Something about misappropriated donations. The charges were dropped, but..." She turned the laptop to show me a news article. "And my mother's friends with him?" I leaned closer to read. "Actually, I remember now. Mum used to work with someone who was involved in that investigation. What was his name? Dan Edwards." Pearl's eyes lit up. "Can you contact him?" "Maybe. He and Mom had a huge falling out right after the scandal broke." I pulled out my phone and opened LinkedIn. "Here he is. He works at a law firm downtown now." "Message him," Pearl urged. "He might know something we can use." As I typed out a message to Dan, Pearl continued digging. "Your mum's been busy," she said after a while. "Look at all these charity event photos. She's on the board of 3 different organisations. Yeah, she loves the attention." I rolled my eyes. "Always has to be the centre of..." "Wait, go back to that photo." Pearl scrolled back. There was my mother standing between Stephen and a familiar face I couldn't quite place. "That's William something," Pearl said. "He's tagged in the photo, William Fowler. He runs some tech startup." My heart stopped. "Pearl, look at his profile picture." There, on William's profile, was a recent photo of him with a golden retriever. My golden retriever. Cooper. "Found you," I whispered. "Holy shit," Pearl breathed. "Hadley, according to this, William is an investor in Stephen's cruise line." The pieces started falling into place. "So, my mother sold Cooper to her friend's business partner for cruise tickets?" "This is good," Pearl said, grabbing my arm. "This means we can track him down. And look, there's a charity gala next weekend. All these people will be there." I stared at the event page, an idea forming, including my mother. "According to the RSVP list, yes. Why?" I pulled out my phone and found Dan Edwards' profile again. "Because I think it's time everyone knew exactly what kind of person my mother is. And Dan might be just the person to help us do it." Pearl closed her laptop, a concerned look crossing her face. "Hadley, what are you planning?" "Something my mother taught me," I said, hitting send on my message to Dan. "That image is everything, and it's time to shatter hers." Dan Edwards agreed to meet me at a quiet coffee shop downtown, far from my mother's usual haunts. He looked older than I remembered, his hair now completely grey, but his eyes still held that sharp intelligence I recalled from my childhood. "Hadley," he said, standing to greet me, "you look just like your father." I settled into the chair across from him. That would drive my mother crazy to hear. "Good," he smiled grimly. "Now tell me why you suddenly want to know about the charity scandal after all this time." I took a deep breath. "My mother sold my dog to William Fowler in exchange for cruise tickets from Stephen." Dan's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. "She did what?" "I need leverage," I said. "Something to make them give Cooper back, And I know you know things about my mother and Stephen that never made it to the papers. He set his cup down slowly. Your mother? She always was good at making things disappear. Money, problems, people who got in her way. What do you mean? The charity scandal wasn't just about missing donations. Dan leaned forward. It was about systematic fraud. Stephen would inflate the value of cruise packages donated to charity auctions. Your mother would arrange for specific buyers to win them at discount prices. The difference would be split between them. My phone buzzed. Another text from my mother. Hadley, darling, the cruise deposit is due tomorrow. Don't make me lose this opportunity. I showed Dan the message. She's still at it, isn't she? Let me guess. Stephen offered her an amazing deal. Dan's voice dripped with sarcasm. A sweet upgrade if we book immediately. Classic pressure tactic. They use the same playbook every time. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through some files. I kept everything, you know. All the evidence. The DA didn't pursue it because bigger fish came along, but what? But the statute of limitations hasn't run out. He showed me some documents. These show your mother's signature on fraudulent paperwork. She claimed these cruise packages were worth triple their actual value. My hands shook as I read. This would ruin her. Yes, it would. Dan sat back. Question is, are you prepared for what that means? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Pearl. Hadley, you need to check your email right now, she said without preamble. William Fowler just posted photos of Cooper on Instagram. He's taking him on the same cruise your mum's booking. I quickly opened my email to find Pearl's screenshots. There was Cooper, sitting on a luxury yacht, wearing a new collar that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The cruise is next week, Pearl continued. He's bragging about some VIP package he got through Stephen. Dan was watching me carefully. The gala is this weekend, he said. 3 days before the cruise. Perfect timing to expose everything. But will it be enough to get Cooper back? I asked. Maybe not alone, Dan admitted. But I have something else. Something your mother doesn't know I know about. He pulled out another file. Remember when your father's life insurance policy mysteriously paid out to her instead of you? My heart stopped. She told me Dad changed the beneficiary before he died. He didn't. She forged his signature. I have proof. The coffee shop suddenly felt very small. Why? Why didn't you ever say anything? Because by the time I found out, the scandal had broken, and your mother had made sure I was discredited. He smiled sadly. But now? Now we can use it all. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from William Fowler himself. Looking forward to meeting you at the gala. Your mother speaks highly of you. He doesn't know, I realised. William doesn't know Cooper was stolen. No, Dan agreed. And I bet good money Stephen didn't tell him where those discounted cruise tickets really came from either. I looked at the documents in front of me, then at the photo of Cooper on William's Instagram. The gala's in 3 days. Yes, and you'll help me? Dan gathered his files. Your mother ruined my career to save herself, cost me my reputation, my savings, everything. So yes, I'll help you. But Hadley, he caught my eye. Be sure you're ready for the fallout. Your mother won't go down quietly. I know, I said, thinking of Cooper, but neither will I. As I left the coffee shop, I called Pearl. Book us tickets for the gala, I said. And remember that black dress you said was too dramatic for any normal occasion? Yeah? Wear it. Because this isn't going to be a normal charity gala. This is going to be a reckoning. The next 2 days at work were a blur of spreadsheets and stolen phone calls. I was in the middle of a budget meeting when Stephen himself called. Hadley, your mother tells me you're hesitating about the cruise. His voice boomed through my phone as I stood in the hallway. Let me sweeten the deal. I'll upgrade both cabins to full suites, ocean view. Both cabins? I asked, playing dumb. Yes, yours and William's. He's bringing his new dog. Wonderful animal, by the way. Your mother mentioned you love dogs. My knuckles turned white around my phone. Did she? Listen, come to the gala tomorrow night. We'll talk details then. Your mother says you're quite the financial whiz. Maybe we could discuss some investment opportunities too. After hanging up, I found Caden waiting by my office door. Everything okay? He asked. You've seemed distracted. I'm sorry, Don't apologise, he cut me off. I overheard your conversation. Stephen Rose, huh? Be careful there. His company's financials are creative, let's say. I looked at him sharply. What do you mean? Let's just say there's a reason we've never done business with them. He paused. Need tomorrow night off? For the gala? How did you... Small world, corporate finance. He smiled. Go. Handle your business. But Hadley, whatever you're planning, make it count. That evening, Pearl and I met Dan at his office to finalise our plan. The wall behind his desk was covered in photos and documents connected by red string. Your mother's been busy since the scandal, Dan said, pointing to recent photos. She's worked her way onto 3 charity boards. Each one has contracted exclusively with Stephen's Cruise Line for their fundraising events. Pearl whistled. That's not suspicious at all. The pattern's the same every time, Dan continued. Inflated valuations, predetermined winners, kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. He tapped a document. And William's company has been their biggest donor. He's being played too, I said softly. Exactly. Dan handed me a USB drive. Everything's here. Financial records, forged documents, the life insurance fraud, all of it. Pearl squeezed my hand. Are you sure about this? Once we do this... She sold Cooper, I said firmly. She sold my dog to fund her fraud scheme. Yes, I'm sure. My phone chimed with a text from my mother. Darling, what are you wearing tomorrow night? Please tell me not that dreadful black dress from Pearl's birthday. Pearl snorted. She really does hate that dress. Good, I replied, because that's exactly what I'm wearing. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through William's Instagram, looking at photos of Cooper. He seemed happy at least, well-fed, loved. My phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Hello? Is this Hadley? A male voice. This is William. William Fowler. My heart stopped. Yes? I hope you don't mind. Stephen gave me your number. Listen, I know this might seem strange, but your mother mentioned you used to have a golden retriever? I sat up straight. Yes. It's just Cooper. That's what I named him. He came with this collar. It had a tag with a different name. Max, I think. And when I tried to register his microchip, it was already registered, I finished. A long pause. Hadley, did your mother sell me your dog? Yes, I whispered. She did. Jesus Christ. He sounded genuinely shocked. I had no idea. I would never... Look, we need to talk. At the gala? Yes, I said. But William, don't tell my mother about this call. Of course not. And Hadley, I'm so sorry. After hanging up, I called Pearl. William knows, I said when she answered. This changes things, she replied. In a good way. Yeah, I said, looking at Dan's USB drive on my nightstand. It does. My phone buzzed one last time. Another text from my mother. Stephen just called. Says you're interested in investing. So proud of you, darling. Finally thinking bigger than just that dog. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started transferring Dan's files. Tomorrow night, everyone would see exactly how big my mother could think, and exactly how far I would go to get Cooper back. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the fake smiles of Seattle's elite. Pearl and I arrived fashionably late, turning heads in our matching black dresses. There's my girl! My mother's voice carried across the room. She air-kissed my cheeks, then stepped back with a frown. Oh, you wore the black dress. You look lovely too, Mum, I said sweetly. Is Stephen here? Of course. He's by the bar with William. She lowered her voice. Such a catch, that William. Single, successful, and currently in possession of stolen property, Pearl muttered under her breath. My mother's eyes narrowed. What was that, dear? Nothing. Pearl smiled brightly. Just admiring the chandelier. We made our way to the bar, where Stephen was holding court with a group of investors. William stood slightly apart, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. When he saw me, his face drained of colour. Hadley! Stephen boomed. The woman of the hour! William here was just telling me how excited he is to have you join us on the cruise. Weren't you, William? William's grip tightened on his whiskey glass. Actually, I needed to talk to Hadley about that. Later, I said quietly. Trust me. My mother appeared at Stephen's elbow. Everyone, they're about to start the presentation. Stephen, darling, aren't you giving a speech? That's right. He straightened his tie. Big announcement about our charitable giving programme. Pearl caught my eye and nodded. Right on cue, Dan walked in through the side door, laptop in hand. Is everything ready? I whispered to him as he passed. All set. Just say the word. Stephen took the stage, tapping the microphone. Good evening, everyone. As chairman of the Coastal Dreams Cruise Line, I'm thrilled to announce our most ambitious charitable giving programme yet. I felt a hand on my arm. William had moved closer. Hadley, about Cooper. Wait for it, I said, watching Stephen. Thanks to the tireless efforts of our board member Michelle, we've raised over $2 million for local charities this year alone. My mother beamed, soaking in the applause. I nodded to Dan, who pressed a button on his laptop. The presentation screen behind Stephen flickered. Suddenly, instead of his corporate logo, there were documents, financial records, forged signatures, photos of my mother accepting envelopes in parking lots. What's happening? Stephen fumbled with his notes. What's happening, I said loudly, stepping forward, is the truth. About the fraudulent valuations, the rigged auctions, the kickbacks. The room went dead silent. My mother's face turned pale. Hadley, she hissed, what are you doing? Showing everyone exactly who you are, Mum, including how you sold my dog to William here in exchange for discounted cruise tickets. Tickets that were part of your latest scheme with Stephen. William stepped forward. Is this true? The cruise package you sold me? It's all true, Dan said, joining us. I have proof of everything, including what really happened to Hadley's father's life insurance policy. My mother's carefully constructed facade cracked. You ungrateful little... Mrs. Lucas, a stern voice cut through the chaos. A man in a dark suit approached, showing a badge. I'm Detective Roberts. We've been investigating these charity auctions for months. I'm afraid you'll need to come with me. This is ridiculous, Stephen sputtered. I've never... William, back me up here. But William was already pulling out his phone. Cooper's microchip registration, he said, showing it to the detective. It's still in Hadley's name. I had no idea he was stolen. Add theft to the charges, Detective Roberts said to his partner. As they led my mother and Stephen away, she turned to me one last time. I did everything for you. Everything. No, Mom. You did everything for yourself. Always. The room erupted in shocked whispers and hurried phone calls. Pearl appeared at my side with my coat. Ready to go? Almost. I turned to William. Cooper is at my house, he finished. With my housekeeper. Would you like to go see him? Now? 20 minutes later, I stood in William's driveway as a familiar golden blur came bounding toward me. Cooper! I fell to my knees as he crashed into me, his tail wagging furiously, covering my face in kisses. He never really settled in, William said, watching us. Now I know why. He was waiting for you. Pearl wiped tears from her eyes. Best revenge ever. It wasn't about revenge, I said, holding Cooper close. It was about justice. And coming home, my phone buzzed. A text from Caden. Saw the news. Take Monday off. You've earned it. I smiled, scratching behind Cooper's ears. Let's go home, boy. For real this time. The morning after the gala, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Cooper barked once, then wagged his tail as Pearl burst in with coffee and newspapers. Your front page news! She spread 3 different papers across my kitchen counter. Look at these headlines. Charity Gala Scandal Rocks, Seattle Elite, Cruise Line CEO arrested in fraud scheme, and my personal favourite. Daughter exposes mother's criminal enterprise over stolen dog. I sipped my coffee, scratching Cooper's head as he leaned against my leg. Have you heard from... your mother? Oh, just wait. Pearl pulled out her phone and played a voicemail. How dare you help her humiliate me? My mother's voice was shrill, even through the speaker. I'm facing criminal charges because my ungrateful daughter couldn't handle a simple business transaction. And you, Pearl, I always knew you were a bad influence. Delete, Pearl said cheerfully, cutting off the rest. She left me 6 more just like it. My phone rang. William. Hey, I answered. Thanks again for last night. Actually, I'm calling because there's something you should know, he sounded worried. Stephen's lawyers are trying to claim you orchestrated this whole thing to manipulate me and damage the company's reputation. Your mother's backing up their story. Of course she is, I sighed. But we have proof. That's just it, he cut in. I've been going through the company's books all night. There's so much more than what you exposed. I'm heading to the DA's office now to turn over everything. I thought you should know first. Thank you, I said softly. For everything. After hanging up, I found Pearl staring at her phone with wide eyes. What now? Your mum just posted on Facebook. It's wow. She handed me her phone. My mother's post was a masterpiece of manipulation. With a heavy heart, I must address the false accusations made by my daughter. As any mother knows, watching your child struggle with professional jealousy is heartbreaking. The dog in question was legally sold, and any implications of wrongdoing are simply a desperate attempt to... She's really going to try to spin this, I said in disbelief. Of course she is, a familiar voice said. Dan stood in my doorway. I hadn't even heard him knock. But she won't succeed. Not this time. He dropped a thick folder on my counter. The DA wants to meet with you today. They're offering your mother a deal, but they need your testimony to nail Stephen and the others involved in the charity fraud. Cooper padded over to Dan, tail wagging. Dan knelt to pet him, then looked up at me. You should know, they found offshore accounts, lots of them, including one with the money from your father's life insurance policy. My hands started shaking. Pearl grabbed them, steadying me. She's going to jail, isn't she? I whispered. Most likely, Dan nodded. The question is for how long? That depends partly on you. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother. Meet me at the house. We can fix this. Family first, remember? Don't go, Pearl said immediately. She's right, Dan agreed. Anything you say to her now could compromise the case. I looked at Cooper, remembering how it felt when she took him away. How many other things had she taken over the years? How many times had she justified her actions as mother knows best? I have to go, I said finally. Not to fix anything, but to end it, properly. Then we're coming with you, Pearl declared. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to my mother's house. She opened the door, wearing her signature pearls as if nothing had changed. Darling, thank good... What are they doing here? Her smile faltered at the sight of Pearl and Dan. They're my witnesses, I said, walking past her into the house. Cooper stayed close to my side, his presence giving me strength. Witnesses? Don't be dramatic. I taught you better than that. She tried to touch my arm, but I stepped back. No, Mum. You taught me to lie, to manipulate, to take what I want regardless of who it hurts. But here's the thing. I met her eyes steadily. I learned a different lesson instead. And what's that? She asked coldly. That the truth always comes out. Always. I pulled out my phone and pressed record. So, let's talk about Dad's life insurance policy and all those offshore accounts and how long you've really been working with Stephen. Her face went through a series of expressions. Shock, anger, calculation, and finally, something that might have been respect. Well, she said, smoothing her skirt, I suppose you really are my daughter after all. No, I replied. I'm my father's daughter, and it's time you answered for everything you've done. The DA's office was cold and sterile, nothing like the warm, deceptive comfort of my mother's house. Cooper lay at my feet as I gave my official statement, his presence keeping me grounded. And when did you first become aware of the fraudulent activities? The prosecutor, Amanda, asked. I suspected for years, but had proof when Dan showed me the documents. I glanced at Dan, who sat in the corner with Pearl. But honestly, it started with Cooper. The dog. Amanda looked confused. My mother's biggest mistake was selling him, I explained. She'd gotten away with everything else because I always believed her excuses. That the life insurance policy change was Dad's choice. That the college fund went to better use. But Cooper... I reached down to scratch his ears. Cooper was the line she shouldn't have crossed. A knock at the door interrupted us. Another prosecutor entered, looking excited. William just finished his deposition, he announced. You're going to want to hear this. William entered, looking exhausted but determined. The offshore accounts weren't just for the charity fraud, he said without preamble. Stephen was running a full Ponzi scheme through the cruise line. Your mother was his principal recruiter for investors. Jesus, Pearl whispered. There's more, William continued. We found emails. Your mother didn't just sell Cooper to me. She was planning to use my connection to the cruise line to bring in bigger investors. She called it securing the family's future. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother's lawyer. She's ready to talk. Full confession in exchange for consideration during sentencing. Amanda read the message over my shoulder. This is good. With her testimony, we can bring down the entire network. But why now? Pearl asked. Why is she suddenly willing to confess? Because she's lost control of the narrative, Dan said, and control is everything to her. Another knock. This time it was Caden. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but you all need to see this. He held up his tablet, showing a live stream from the local news. My mother sat in an orange jumpsuit, makeup perfect despite her surroundings, speaking directly to the camera. I admit to my mistakes, she was saying, but everything I did was for my daughter, to secure her future, to give her opportunities. Yes, I sold her dog, a decision I deeply regret. But when you're a mother, you do whatever it takes to protect your child's interests. Turn it off, I said quietly. She's trying to spin this into a story about maternal sacrifice, Amanda observed. No, I stood up, Cooper rising with me. She's trying to maintain control one last time, but I have something she doesn't. What's that? William asked. The truth. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's lawyer. Tell her I'll speak at her sentencing, but not to help her, to tell everyone exactly who she is. 2 weeks later, I stood in the courtroom, facing my mother. She'd traded her pearls for prison orange, but her eyes were as calculating as ever. My mother taught me that image is everything, I began. That perception matters more than reality. That love is conditional, based on what you can provide. She sold my dog, my best friend, not because she needed money, but because she needed to prove she could. That her control over my life was absolute. I took a deep breath, feeling Cooper press against my leg, Pearl's hand on my shoulder, Dan's supportive nod from the gallery. But she was wrong about everything. Love isn't a transaction. Family isn't a business deal. And the truth always matters more than the story you tell about it. My mother's face remained impassive, but her hands trembled slightly. I'm not here to ask for leniency, I continued. I'm here to say that every choice has consequences. Every betrayal leaves a mark. And sometimes the biggest act of love is holding someone accountable for their actions. The judge leaned forward. And what consequences do you believe appropriate, given your mother's cooperation? I looked directly at my mother, whatever the court decides, because for the first time in my life, I'm not responsible for managing her choices, or protecting her image, or believing her lies. As the bailiff led her away, my mother turned to me one last time. I really did do it all for you, she said softly. No, Mum, you did it for yourself, and now we both have to live with that truth. Outside the courthouse, Cooper bounded ahead as Pearl, Dan, William and Caden walked with me to the car. You okay? Pearl asked. I watched Cooper playing in the sunshine, free and happy. Yeah, I said. I really am. The morning newspaper sat untouched on my kitchen counter as Cooper and I shared our usual breakfast routine. Pearl let herself in, carrying coffee in her laptop. Have you read it? She asked, nodding toward the paper. Not yet. I took a sip of the coffee she offered. How bad is it? 15 years, she said softly. Stephen got 20. The headlines are calling it Justice Served. Cooper padded over, resting his head on my lap as I finally picked up the paper. My mother's booking photo stared back at me, her perfect posture unchanged by prison clothes. She wrote you a letter, Pearl said, pulling an envelope from her bag. It came to my address. I turned the envelope over in my hands, recognising the precise handwriting. Did you read it? Of course not. She paused. Are you going to? Before I could answer, my doorbell rang. William stood there with a familiar-looking folder. The DA finished processing the offshore accounts, he said, walking in. They found your father's life insurance money, all of it. They're releasing it back to you as the rightful beneficiary. I stared at the folder. I don't want it. What? Pearl and William said in unison. I want to donate it to the animal shelter where I found Cooper. I scratched behind Cooper's ears. Maybe help other dogs find their real families. William smiled. I can help with that. Set up a proper foundation, make it official. Speaking of official, Pearl interjected. Caden called. The promotion board reviewed your case. They're worried about having a convicted fraudster's daughter handling client accounts. I finished. Actually, no, she grinned. They're impressed with your integrity. You're being promoted to senior analyst. My phone buzzed. A text from Dan. Turn on the news. Now. We crowded around Pearl's laptop as she pulled up the local news station. Stephen was being led into court, but it was the headline that caught my attention. Cruise Line CEO names additional conspirators in expanding fraud case. He's turning on everyone, William said, including your mother. It doesn't matter, I replied, picking up her unopened letter. She's already lost everything that mattered to her, her reputation, her social standing, her control. I ripped the letter in half, then quarters, letting the pieces fall into the recycling bin. You don't want to know what she said? Pearl asked. I already know. It would be another manipulation, another attempt to rewrite history. I stood up, grabbing Cooper's leash. Want to come with us to the shelter? I think it's time to start turning this story into something good. At the shelter, the director couldn't believe the size of the donation. This will fund our medical care program for years, she said, wiping away tears. I want to do more than just write a check, I told her. I want to volunteer, help other dogs find their forever homes. Like I found mine, a voice said behind us. It was William, holding a squirming puppy. Meet my new friend. The shelter staff helped me pick her out, Pearl laughed. Another golden retriever? Actually, William smiled. She's Cooper's sister from a new litter. The shelter just got them in. I thought, maybe it's time to make some better memories. Cooper sniffed the puppy carefully, then gave her a gentle lick. The puppy yipped happily, trying to wrestle with her big brother. See? Pearl nudged me. Family isn't always what we're born into. Sometimes it's what we choose. My phone buzzed one last time, another news alert. Michelle Lucas transferred to federal prison. I deleted it without reading further. You know what the best revenge is? I said, watching Cooper play with his sister. Living well, being happy, choosing love over control. Speaking of choices, William said, the shelter's having a fundraising event next month. Would you like to help organise it? Do it right this time. No fake valuations, I teased. No fraud, he promised. Just good people helping good causes. Count me in, Pearl declared. We'll show them how it's done. Cooper barked in agreement, making us all laugh. As we walked out of the shelter, the puppy's adoption papers signed and a volunteer schedule in hand, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. My mother had taught me that image was everything, but she was wrong. The truth was everything. And the truth was, I had finally found my real family, not in the perfect facade of my mother's world, but in the messy, authentic love of true friends, loyal dogs, and choices that made me proud. Ready to go home? Pearl asked. I looked at my unlikely family, Pearl, William, Cooper, and now a new puppy, and smiled. I already am home.
My name's Kalia. My mom kicked me out the same week I lost my job. No warning, no mercy. She said I was a burden. My ex-husband backed her. Even my so-called family mocked me at a dinner they called a farewell. They had no idea I had a hidden fortune. No clue I was about to own the company that paid their bills, or the house they threw me out of. The sun had barely set when I pulled my suitcase up the front steps. The air in Austin still carried that late spring warmth, the kind that made everything feel slower, heavier. I had just come back from Evelyn's funeral, a woman I had spent 15 years taking care of. A woman who, in the final years of her life, had become the only person who ever looked at me like I mattered. I wasn't expecting a welcome party, but I also wasn't expecting Alma to open the door, look me dead in the eye, and say, "Didn't expect you back so soon." No hug. No, "How are you holding up?" Just that one line, flat and cold. I stepped inside anyway. It didn't feel like home anymore, but my name was still on the deed. Or at least it had been. I wasn't even sure anymore. The living room looked rearranged, like someone had tried to erase any trace I'd ever been here. Alma stood with her arms crossed. "So, what's your plan now?" she asked, barely disguising the irritation in her voice. Before I could respond, Reed stepped out from the hallway. "Wait, so you're unemployed now, right?" he said, half laughing. "We can't carry you, Kalia. We've got enough on our plate." I stared at him, unsure if I heard him right. Reed, my ex-husband, was still living in the house I'd helped pay off, and now he was acting like I was some random squatter? "Tell her this isn't a halfway house." A voice crackled over the speakerphone. It was Judith, his mother, calling in from another state, clearly looped in on the ambush. Alma walked away briefly and returned with something that made my stomach drop. My suitcase. Packed. "You've been gone for months. We figured it was time to reset the space," she said, avoiding eye contact. "I paid the mortgage on this house for years," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I gave up school to work 2 jobs so you wouldn't lose this place." Alma shrugged. "And we appreciated that. But you're not a charity case, Kalia. Everyone's struggling. You'll land on your feet." I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry. My chest felt tight. Betrayal wasn't new to me. But this? This was a knife in the back, twisted slowly. Later that evening, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, my former room, trying to make sense of it. I remembered all the times I skipped classes, pulled double shifts at the diner, and the hospital just so Alma wouldn't have to file bankruptcy. She used to cry and say things like, "You've saved this family." She used to hold my hand and swear, "I'll never forget this sacrifice." Well, she did. That night, instead of apologizing, Alma decided to throw a farewell dinner. I didn't want to go, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me run away either. Neighbors came, a few extended relatives. Even Soraya, Judith's smug niece, showed up in her overpriced shoes and judgmental smile. Alma clinked her wine glass and said loudly, "Let's all raise a toast to Kalia. She's finally moving on, hopefully to something that doesn't involve dusting someone else's furniture." Laughter rippled through the room. My face burned. Soraya added, "She should look into one of those live-in caregiver gigs again. At least then she gets a roof over her head, right?" Another voice chimed in, "Just don't end up under a bridge. Wouldn't look good for the family." I didn't say a word. I smiled. I nodded. I played along, because that's what I had always done, kept the peace. But inside, something broke. They had no idea what I carried in my purse that night. No clue what Evelyn had left me. Not even a guess at the account I had access to. $8 million. Sitting quietly in a trust fund with my name on it. As I walked out of the house, suitcase in hand, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just smiled. And when I got to the curb, I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and stared at the zeros like they were promises I had made to myself a long time ago. That night, I didn't crash on a friend's couch. I booked the most expensive suite in downtown Austin. Morning light pushed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything gold, but I felt none of it. The sheets were silk, the coffee was rich, and the air smelled like lavender from the spa downstairs. Still, I stood in my robe, staring out over the city like it was a battlefield. I wasn't there to indulge. I was there to gather myself before doing what I should have done years ago. Face Alma, not for comfort, but for truth. At 10:14 a.m., the concierge called to say I had a visitor. I already knew who it was. I didn't invite her up. She came anyway. The door opened, and there she stood. No tears, no apologies. Just Alma, dressed like she was headed to a board meeting. She set a manila envelope on the marble coffee table and sat without asking. "You always liked things neat," she said casually, like this was brunch. "So I figured we'd settle everything clean." I didn't sit. She opened the envelope and slid a printed stack of papers toward me. A list, organized, highlighted, itemized, diapers, 1990. $421.17 elementary school lunch account, 1996 to 2001. $3,209.64 college dorm setup, 2005. $2,103 mortgage contributions, 2009 to 2022. $127,000. Gas, groceries, utilities, over 30 years. $149,742.87. At the bottom, bold and underlined, total due from Kalia, $391,447.68. I blinked. What Is this? Alma took a sip of the water the staff had set out. Receipts, records, proof. I kept them because I knew, someday, you'd forget all I did for you. My heart didn't sink, it boiled. So you've been raising me like I was a business investment? With an eye on the return? She tilted her head. Call it whatever you want. I call it accountability. There was no heat in her tone. Just matter of fact, cold as steel. I started laughing, not out of humor, but because it was too absurd to cry. You raised me with a calculator in your back pocket. Unbelievable. You think love pays the bills, Kalia? She snapped, voice rising now. Everything has a price, and since you seem so independent all of a sudden, it's time you paid your share. She reached into her bag and pulled out a yellow sticky note. Attorney's name, family law. If you won't repay what you owe voluntarily, I'll see you in court. She leaned back, like she'd just dropped the mic at some twisted TED Talk. Before I could respond, Reed's face appeared on her phone screen. Zoom call. He'd been listening the entire time. Hey, Kalia, he said, fake smile plastered on. Look, I know this is awkward, but Mom's right. You've lived rent-free most of your life. It's time to step up. And then Judith's voice cut in from another square. Frankly, Kalia, this isn't personal. It's just the reality of adulthood. We've carried you morally and financially long enough. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people sat at my table, ate from my hands, slept under the roof I helped save. And now they were uniting like some petty legal avengers to take me down? I stared at Alma. You're really doing this. She nodded. This isn't revenge, it's balance. Something in me went quiet. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply walked to the minibar, poured myself a glass of sparkling water, and ended the call without a word. Once the room fell silent, I opened my laptop, logged into the trust's private portal. New request created, internal audit, Whitlow Family Trust. I wasn't doing it to flaunt what I had. I was doing it because they thought I was cornered. They thought they could put a number on my life and file it under accounts receivable. They had no idea that the woman they were trying to bankrupt had spent the last decade helping manage Evelyn's multi-million-dollar estate. They had no clue what I'd learned, what I'd documented, and what I now owned outright. If Alma wanted to turn love into litigation, fine. I'd return the favor, with interest. But before I fought back, I needed to understand when the war really began. A few days later, I walked alone through the neighborhood where I'd grown up. The schoolyard fences were still painted the same dull green. The ice cream shop on the corner had become a vape store. Time had moved on, but my memories, they clung like ivy to every brick I passed. I paused outside my old middle school and remembered how I used to skip lunch, pretending I wasn't hungry, just so I could hand Alma back the extra $5. She used to say, "Don't waste money. Your stomach doesn't pay bills." Back then, I believed her. I was 14 when I begged to apply for a summer science camp. It was the kind of thing other kids got as a reward. Trips, camps, scholarships. Alma didn't even look up from the newspaper. You think we have money for your little dreams? Camps are for spoiled kids, not for girls like you. If you want something, get a job. So I did. That summer, while my classmates went hiking and made volcano projects, I stocked shelves in a dusty thrift store on Congress Avenue, earning minimum wage and adult resentment. When I got into college, I didn't even go to orientation. I took a job at a call center the same week because Alma said, "You owe me your future. I didn't raise you so you could go waste time sitting in dorms." By 25, every raise I got went straight to the house. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself she'd be proud. But Alma never said thank you, only, "You're doing what's right. That's what daughters do." No hugs, no holidays, just bills and guilt. I thought that's what love was supposed to feel like. But I see it now. I wasn't a daughter. I was a return on investment. Back at the hotel, my phone buzzed with a new message from the bank. It was a transaction alert, $4,200 withdrawn from one of my private accounts. I stared at the number, confused. I hadn't touched that account in weeks. I logged in immediately. The timestamp, the IP, the location. It all pointed to one place. Alma's house. My breath caught in my throat. She had access. Years ago, I'd helped her set up mobile transfers. I never thought she'd use it behind my back. But there it was. She hadn't just thrown me out. She had reached back in and taken from me, like she always had. Quietly, shamelessly. I felt it then. That sharp, cold clarity. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. And it wouldn't be ignored. Later that evening, I sat at a quiet corner of a coffee shop near South Lamar, trying to catch my breath, get some air, maybe feel a little more human. I was sipping my espresso when the rejection email came in. Thank you for your interest in the executive assistant position at Rosen & Haller, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Best of luck. I'd been shortlisted. I'd done 2 interviews. It didn't make sense. Then I got the voicemail. Someone from HR had forgotten to hang up after leaving the message. She seemed competent, sure, a woman whispered to someone off mic. But I heard she got fired and is getting sued by her own family. That kind of mess. It's too risky. Liability nightmare. I sat frozen. Someone was spreading things, twisting the truth to make me radioactive. There were only a handful of people who knew about the family threats. Only one of them hated me enough to want me professionally blacklisted. I clenched my jaw, opened my email, and started typing. Subject line: formal complaint, identity theft and financial fraud. 2. Legal at Centrabank CC, personal attorney. I hovered over send for a long second, and then I clicked. This wasn't just about stolen money anymore. It was about stolen years, stolen choices, stolen freedom. If they wanted me gone, I'd vanish, but not before I exposed every secret they tried to bury. I gave them one more chance. To stop. To walk away. To let me be. I typed it slowly into the family group chat. What you're doing isn't just cruel. It's legally questionable. Consider this a final warning. Stop now or be held accountable. 3 dots blinked, then disappeared. A moment later, Reed replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. Seconds after that, Alma sent a laughing face. Not a word, not a denial, just mockery. They weren't afraid. They still thought I was bluffing. The next morning, I woke up to the kind of nightmare you can't shake off with coffee or a hot shower. My phone was buzzing nonstop. A friend from high school forwarded me the link. Disgraced maid or manipulative heiress? The truth behind a viral inheritance scandal. It was plastered across a local lifestyle site, the kind that fed on gossip dressed up as journalism. There were no facts, just shadows twisted into a narrative. It claimed I had seduced Evelyn in her final years, manipulating a vulnerable widow to rewrite her will. It even hinted that I'd been caught in intimate moments inside the estate, though no evidence was offered. Just anonymous sources and cropped, unflattering photos of me taken years apart, mashed together for effect. I called the publisher directly. The receptionist transferred me to their editor. We were pitched the story by a reliable local academic, he said coolly. A Dr. Judith Halden. Of course, I didn't yell, I didn't plead. I simply said, "Thank you for confirming," and ended the call. They wanted to drag my name through the dirt? Fine, but they underestimated how deep I'd already been buried in my life, and how hard I had fought to climb out. By noon, I was trending for all the wrong reasons. A Twitter thread titled "Rich Maid Steals Inheritance" had racked up over 40,000 retweets. TikTokers were acting out scenes of me crying crocodile tears, wearing fake Chanel, pretending to dust bookshelves with diamond rings on their fingers. My inbox exploded. Messages poured in. Gold-digging parasite. You make women look bad. Elder abuse isn't cute just because you're in designer heels. You're disgusting. You should be locked up. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain had crystallized into something sharper. I posted only one thing publicly. False accusations are defamatory. I won't respond with words. I'll respond with evidence. Then I opened Judith's contact and sent her a private message. I know what you're doing. I know who you talk to, and I know how you think this ends. You're wrong. The next thing I publish won't be a gossip piece. It'll be proof. And it won't be anonymous. She didn't reply, but she read it. I saw the scene mark flash under my message. I hoped it made her stomach twist. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. And if they really wanted to see what I looked like when I stopped playing nice, well, they were about to. The only thing louder than Soraya's heels were her insults, each one sharper than the last. She strutted across the marble showroom floor like she owned it, clipboard in hand, fake smile glued on her face. I had come to quietly tour 2 luxury villas just outside West Austin. Nothing flashy, no entourage, no need for attention. I had already wired the deposit through my investment firm under the name Whitlow Holdings. My name was nowhere on the paperwork yet, but Soraya, with all the grace of a game show host and the venom of a teenage bully, didn't bother to hide her disdain. Let's not waste time, she said, waving at the scale model. These units aren't for people who clean for a living. She didn't recognize me. Not in this setting, not dressed like this, not with my hair straightened and a 1,000-yard stare that no longer begged for respect. I gave her a polite smile and walked toward the balcony model, letting her keep talking. So many people walk in here thinking a fat tip makes them luxury class, she added under her breath to another agent nearby. Everyone laughed. I didn't flinch. She gestured dramatically at the most expensive unit. We'll just skip this one, way out of your budget. I turned to the senior sales manager and quietly asked him to confirm the credentials under Whitlow Holdings. He excused himself. 5 minutes later, he returned looking different, more upright, alert, almost nervous. He leaned toward Soraya and said softly, "She's the client." Not just a client, the buyer. She's purchasing both Model A and Model D. Soraya blinked, then tried to laugh. I didn't realize. I cut her off. I'll take both, I said calmly, and I'd like her commission revoked. I'll pay full rate to someone else. She opened her mouth again, but I was already walking away. Later that night, I sat in the quiet of my suite, sipping peppermint tea while scanning new interior design proposals. My email pinged, a message flagged as urgent. It was from Reed. Subject line: Who is Whitlow Holdings? Attached was a real estate article about a new buyer shaking up the market with multi-million-dollar deals. The name caught his attention. Whitlow, after all, wasn't just any name, it was Evelyn's. He had finally connected the dots. In the body of the email, he'd written, "Did Evelyn leave you something? Why didn't you say anything when you quit? We thought you were broke. No, how are you? No, are you okay? Just questions about money." I didn't respond. Apparently, Reed had even asked Alma about it earlier that day. According to the concierge who overheard their call, Alma's voice went from dismissive to panicked in under 10 seconds. She never mentioned any inheritance, she had said. She was just a maid. There's no way. No way. They didn't know the half of it. Back in my suite, I opened a package that had arrived earlier that afternoon. It was postmarked from Evelyn's private attorney. Inside was a handwritten letter. Evelyn's final words to me. If they ever doubt your worth, don't prove it. Own it. They made you small. Let them watch you grow. I closed the letter, folded it carefully, and slid it into the back of my journal. They still thought I was the maid. Let them. Because tomorrow, the maid would be buying the house they slept in and deciding if they were worth keeping. And now that I'd taken something back, it was time to take back everything. Some people strike back with anger. I preferred paperwork. I sat across from my attorney in a quiet conference room, the windows facing the downtown skyline like they were witnesses to what was coming. In front of us were 2 thick folders. One held documented proof, decades of mortgage contributions, property tax records, maintenance costs, and every dollar I poured into the house, Alma now claimed as hers. The other was more recent, shareholder documents showing that Whitlow Trust now held 51% of Halden and Partners, the financial consulting firm Reed operated like his personal empire. Neither of them knew I'd already moved the pieces. I wasn't angry anymore. I was surgical. Reed arrived at his office around 8:30 that morning, coffee in hand, ready to play boss. He didn't even make it to his office door. The receptionist, a new hire, stood up nervously. "Mr. Halden, I think you'll want to go straight to HR." He blinked. "Why?" The lights in the main hallway were dimmed. The screens usually showing firm performance metrics now flashed. "Internal transition in progress. Please stand by." Downstairs, Human Resources handed him a letter. "Effective immediately, Mr. Reed Halden is terminated from his position as CEO by majority shareholder vote. Further access to company systems has been revoked." He stared at the paper, then at the signature. "Not mine, but my attorney's." His face drained of color. He stormed out and called Alma from the parking lot. "She fired me," he hissed. Alma sounded confused. "What do you mean she fired you? You own the company?" "No," Reed said, voice rising. "She owns the damn building." Meanwhile, I didn't flinch. The building was just a bonus. I had lunch that afternoon with my real estate attorney at a small bistro near Town Lake. While she enjoyed her salad, I reviewed the formal claim we were filing for the house I'd been thrown out of just weeks before. It wasn't revenge, it was restoration. For 30 years, my name was nowhere on the deed. But the payments, my W-2s, my transfers, my repair records, all traceable, all time-stamped. And now, Alma would need to explain to a judge why her name was on something she hadn't paid for in over a decade. Her lawyer received the motion by courier the next morning. Alma called me, of course. "You're suing me for a house?" she spat. "No," I said. "I'm reclaiming what I already paid for." "You're seriously doing this? After everything I've done for you?" I kept my tone even. "You made me earn every moment under that roof. Now I'm returning the favor, paper for paper." 2 days later, I received notice that a preliminary ruling was in my favor. My name was reinstated as co-owner with immediate rights to valuation or full repossession, pending final review. The judge had even written, "Based on documentation, the defendant has benefited from considerable financial contribution from the plaintiff without compensation." Translation: if Alma didn't agree to settle, she could be evicted. I didn't want her on the street. I didn't want her at all. So I sent a single message. "Don't pack. I'm not kicking you out, but don't ever think this house is yours again." She didn't reply. And I didn't need her to, because justice doesn't always come with a gavel or a courtroom audience. Sometimes it comes quietly, when the balance finally shifts back to where it belonged. I expected silence. What I got was a smear campaign designed to ruin me completely. When I became a trending hashtag, I realized this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was war. My face was everywhere, cropped, filtered, demeaned. TikTok skits mocked me as the maid who conned her dying boss. Twitter threads accused me of manipulating a lonely old woman. Some low-effort podcast even ran a full episode titled, "From Mop to Mansion, The Kalia Conspiracy." Then came the worst of it. A source close to the family leaked claims that I'd seduced Evelyn while she was sick, that I took advantage of her frailty, that I isolated her from real family to take control of her estate. It was grotesque, but it wasn't random. The account spreading it all, a burner tied to Judith's IP address. She wanted me ruined, branded, deleted from sympathy, but she forgot. I had receipts. Real ones. So I went live. Title: "So this is the maid who stole millions?" The screen showed my face. No makeup, no filters, no smile. "Hi," I began. "Since so many of you are talking about me, I thought I'd talk to you directly." I held up folders, one by one. My employment contract with Evelyn. 22 years of service. Click. Document opened. Every health bill I paid when she was too proud to file insurance. Click. Statements highlighted. Photos of the house before I renovated it. Paid out of pocket. Then I read messages. Texts from Alma calling me a walking ATM, and Reed joking that I was the best free tenant ever. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Within minutes, the comments shifted. She was used. She didn't steal, she survived. Where's the apology? I ended the stream with one final file, a video clip. Grainy but clear, dated 3 months before Evelyn passed. She sat in her favorite chair, smiling at the camera. "If you're seeing this," she said, "it means I'm gone. I want it known. Kalia is not just my employee. She is the daughter I chose. She cared for me without asking for anything. That's why everything I have belongs to her now." I let it play to the end. No cuts, no commentary. Then I closed the stream. It took hours for the shockwave to hit full speed. News outlets picked it up. Opinion columns flipped sides. TikTokers who mocked me deleted their videos or replaced them with teary-eyed apologies. And Judith? Gone from social media. Reed, though, he couldn't help himself. He streamed live from a dimly lit kitchen, eyes red, voice shaky. "I didn't know she'd do all this. I didn't know she'd turn the world against us." The comments were merciless. "Because you turned against her first. She gave you a home. You gave her shame. And Alma, she stayed quiet. No posts, no calls, no statement. I didn't need one. For the first time, the silence was enough. I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't proud. I was just free. I didn't win. I just stopped losing. And for the first time, I could finally breathe. The knock on my door wasn't loud. It was the kind that begged, not demanded. I opened it, expecting room service, or maybe a neighbor. But there she was. Alma. Her shoulders slouched, her eyes swollen, her once flawless lipstick now a faint memory. "I lost everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The house. Reed took off. Judith won't even answer me anymore." I didn't invite her in. I just stood there, hand on the doorknob, watching a woman I once called mother unravel in front of me like loose thread from a worn-out sweater. She continued, her breath shaky. "I know I was wrong, Kalia. I know I hurt you. Please, I just need a few weeks." There was no show, no sobbing, no crocodile tears, just exhaustion, and maybe, for once, a sliver of truth. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. "I'm not your home anymore," I said softly. She looked up, searching for something in my face. "So that's it?" "No," I said, pulling an envelope from my side table. "This is." Inside was a prepaid card and a printed list of senior housing centers with support programs. "It's enough for 6 months. After that, it's on you." She took the envelope slowly, like it might burn her fingers. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. "I didn't need them. You don't owe me thanks," I said. "And I don't owe you anything more." I closed the door gently, not with force, not with spite, just closure. Later that week, headlines changed again. Judith was under investigation for falsifying financial records tied to social media sponsorships. The blog that ran the fake story issued a quiet apology at 2 a.m., the kind meant to be missed. Reed lost his platform completely after violating content policies. His final stream? A 3-hour monologue about being misunderstood, barely watched and quickly forgotten. And Alma, she didn't vanish, but she became small, like a shadow that no longer startled me in the dark. The Austin Tribune ran a piece titled, "Not a Maid, but a Martyr." I didn't read it. I didn't need someone else's words to explain mine. Instead, I spent the afternoon at my lake house. The wind off the water rustled the tall grass. A heron skimmed the shoreline. My name wasn't trending. My phone didn't ring. It was quiet. And in that silence, I wrote a letter. Not to Alma or Judith or Reed. To myself, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. I folded the note, slipped it into a glass jar, and buried it beneath the oak tree out back, right where the roots were strong. Some debts can't be repaid, but they can be released. I didn't need closure, I needed peace. And peace, finally, had a name, mine. Most mornings, I wake up to birdsong and the smell of dark roast coffee. Nothing more, nothing less. My lake house is quiet. It used to be a trophy, something I thought I had to prove I was worthy of. Now it's just home, a real one, no performance required. There are no lawyers in my calendar anymore, no interviews, no articles to defend myself against. Just a class of 6 students from the local elementary school who show up every Tuesday and Thursday for piano lessons. They call me Miss Kalia. That's all. Not the maid, not the fraud, not the scandal, just me. Monica stops by sometimes. We became friends in the least expected way. Her trying to sell me property, me buying 2 units on a whim. She brought over banana bread this morning. "People still whisper about you, you know," she said as she leaned on my kitchen counter. "You're the woman who bought 2 villas in one afternoon and disappeared." I laughed and took a sip of coffee. Funny, right? And I still sleep in just one room. I don't post anymore. I haven't opened my social accounts in months. The world can keep shouting. I'm not listening. "Let the world scream," I told Monica once. "I have silence." She nodded like she understood. Truth is, peace isn't a loud arrival. It's not a headline or a standing ovation. It's making dinner without being interrupted. It's drinking coffee before it gets cold. It's listening to wind instead of worry. Sometimes I think about them, not out of longing, just in passing. Judith is under federal review now. Tax evasion, sponsored content fraud, something about falsifying donation receipts. Reed's business license was revoked after a whistleblower exposed years of shady contracts. He can't legally operate a company until he's almost 50. And Alma, she's still alive. That's all I know. I received a postcard last month. No return address. The handwriting looked familiar. "I hope you're well. I'm sorry." That was it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth is, forgiveness doesn't need a reply. That same afternoon, I taught Ellie, my youngest student, a few bars of Moonlight Sonata. She stopped and asked, "Why do you like this song so much?" I smiled and rested my fingers gently on the keys. "Because it starts sad," I said, "but it doesn't stay that way." She nodded like it made perfect sense. Kids get it more than adults sometimes. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves outside. I paused, closed the lid over the keys, and just listened. No chaos, no threats, no crisis. Just the sound of a life, mine, still going, still whole, still here. They took everything from me, except the one thing they never understood I had, the will to begin again. Before you go, let me say this. Life doesn't always break you with thunder. Sometimes it chips away at you, little by little, through the people who were supposed to love you most. I spent years mistaking silence for peace, loyalty for love, and survival for living. But here's what I learned. Boundaries are not betrayals. Walking away doesn't make you the villain. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is choose yourself. If my story sounded familiar, if it echoed something in your own life, I hope it reminded you that you are allowed to start over. You don't need permission to rebuild. You don't need applause to be free. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved just to protect your peace? Or maybe you're still trying to decide if it's time? Let me know in the comments. Just drop a 1 if this story touched your heart, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't connect with you, that's okay too. Tell me why. I'm here to listen. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about healing, about truth, about power in the quietest places, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because your story matters too, and you're not alone anymore. I'm Lyra. And yeah, my dad forced me into law school. He said art was a joke, a phase, something I'd thank him for giving up. But while I was filing motions and memorizing statutes, I was also painting in secret. By day, I argued in court. By night, I sold canvases for thousands, until one of them ended up hanging in my law firm, and no one knew it was mine. But what happens when your double life isn't just discovered, it's betrayed? By someone in your own family? And when the man who silenced your dreams? The win that didn't feel like one. They say winning feels like champagne, fireworks, justice. It didn't feel like anything. I stood in a downtown Seattle courtroom, accepting congratulations like a robot in heels. Smiles, handshakes, pats on the back. Another clean win for Ren, someone joked. I smiled. Cold, perfect. Glassy, uncracked. Inside, I felt nothing. We'd just won a huge corporate liability case, the kind that lands headlines and padded invoices. But all I felt was a numb, aching quiet. No pride, no joy, just silence. The hum of fluorescent lights, the scrape of chairs, my heels clicking on marble as I left. The elevator ride down was still. Outside the glass, the city moved. Umbrellas, coffee cups, rush hour blurs. And I wondered, not for the first time, who I could have been if I hadn't become this. Not Lyra Wren, legal prodigy. Not Judge Wren's daughter, just Lyra. But that version of me had been killed years ago, silently, without a fight. The courtroom wasn't justice. It was a cage, polished, prestigious, but a cage all the same. Back in my office, I stared at my framed degrees. University of Washington, Yale Law, honors, my name engraved on plaques. Once I thought they mattered. Now they felt like tombstones, markers of the girl I used to be. I never chose this path. I complied. I performed. Because in a family like mine, where both parents are legal giants, deviation is disobedience. I remember when I tried. I was 17 when CalArts offered me a full scholarship. I'd been accepted into their visual arts program, one of the youngest in the country. I came home clutching that letter like a lifeline. Dad was reading the Wall Street Journal. Mom was grading papers. I got in, I said. He didn't look up. Into what? California Institute of the Arts, full ride. They said I was one of their top applicants. He finally took the letter, read it, then tore it in half. Clean, slow. Mom didn't flinch. We don't raise daydreamers, he said. Art isn't a career. It's a phase, or a fast track to failure. Then he walked out. Just like that, my future, ripped apart in his hands. I didn't argue. I folded. Enrolled in pre-law at UW. Burned my sketchbooks. Buried my dreams. But something small survived. A flicker that whispered, "You're more than this." That whisper turned into a scream the day I overheard my supervisor outside my office. She was next in line, he said, but someone in her family stepped in, quietly advised against it, said she was unstable, too distracted. I knew who he meant. My father, still pulling strings, still deciding which doors I was allowed to walk through. The betrayal cracked something in me. I didn't confront him. He'd just spin it as concern. That's how men like him disguise control as love. That night, I drove. Across the bridge. To a warehouse only I knew about. My secret studio. Inside, the smell of paint and turpentine hit me like oxygen. I pulled the cloth off a half-finished piece. It was raw, untamed, real. I dipped my brush in crimson, not paint, but anger, and began again. The day my secret life was hung on a wall. Every brush stroke came from more than just color. It came from everything I'd never said. From every line my father crossed, every silence my mother kept. From every truth I buried beneath court winds, designer heels, and emotionless smiles. I painted until my arms went numb, until my chest stopped hurting, until I could breathe again. By sunrise, the light bled through cracked warehouse windows. My hands were stained red, gold, violet. I didn't clean up. I just stared at the canvas, messy, raw, honest. For once, it reflected what I actually felt. Then I did what I always do. I washed my hands, pulled my hair into a tight bun, changed into a navy pantsuit, covered the exhaustion under my eyes, became the version of myself the world expects. At Ravenhill Law Group, the morning smelled like espresso and tension. I got in early, less noise, fewer questions. My assistant, Josh, glanced up as I passed. "Morning, did you see the new art in reception?" I paused. "New art?" He nodded. "Yeah, came in late yesterday. Donated by some anonymous client. Abstract, kinda intense." My stomach dropped. "What does it look like?" He shrugged. "Big. Moody. Like someone had a lot going on." I walked off before I could ask more, heels echoing down the hall, heartbeat racing. It couldn't be. No way. But when I turned the corner into the main lobby, I stopped cold. There it was. Veil of the Unspoken. My painting. Hung right beneath the firm's logo, framed between photos of the founding partners and a marble statue of Lady Justice. No one else knew. No one could possibly recognize it. But I did. I knew every line, every buried symbol, every uneven brushstroke. It was mine. Signed, Aurora Knight. I felt like I was staring at a secret weapon, one made from my own heart. And now, it was out in the open. No one batted an eye. The receptionist sipped her latte. 2 interns whispered about a deposition. Business as usual. But it wasn't usual. It was either a coincidence or a warning. I stepped closer. There it was. The flaw I'd always meant to fix. That sharp twist in the center. Silas had picked it up before I could finish. He'd sold it at auction last month. I never asked who bought it. Now I knew. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to my parents' house. Dinner was perfect. Rosemary chicken, wild rice, silence dressed in civility. The kind of meal where nothing is said and everything is implied. After dessert, my mother noticed something sticking out of my tote bag. A folded flyer from a gallery show. She pulled it out before I could stop her. Her eyes scanned the design, then landed on me. "This looks familiar." I smiled like I'd rehearsed it. "Just a modern art exhibit I walked by. Thought it looked cool." She said nothing. Just stared. Long. Quiet. That's her way. She doesn't accuse. She lets silence bruise you instead. We didn't talk about it again, but the air between us turned colder than the wine she didn't finish. Later, back home, I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling. The day had undone me, piece by piece. The painting, the way my mother looked at me. And then, my phone buzzed. It was Silas. "Aurora's next piece is getting attention. A reporter asked if there's a legal world connection. Be careful." My chest tightened. Not from fear, but something heavier. Dread. I didn't respond. Just stared at the screen. The life I'd built in secret was cracking open, and the people who taught me to hide? They might be the first to expose me. The walls weren't just closing in. They were turning into mirrors. And everywhere I turned, I caught my own reflection staring back like a threat. I knew it the moment I stepped into the Ravenhill Auditorium for our annual internal legal debate. Everyone was watching me just a second too long, their curiosity dressed in polite grins and 2 casual glances. Something in the air felt off, lighter on the surface, tighter underneath. I had been paired against Clara Red, a junior partner with a jawline sharp enough to slice through glass, and a personality even colder. She always smiled with her mouth, never her eyes. And she was always watching. The topic was dry, statutory interpretation in wrongful termination cases, but I saw an opportunity, a way to shift the usual lifeless back and forth. Maybe a sliver of rebellion through creativity. Maybe a test. Could I bring a piece of the real me into this sterile world? When it was my turn, I stood up straight, ignored the knot in my stomach, and began. My voice was steady. "I'd like to propose we consider this not just through legal precedents, but through visual perspective. Think of a courtroom as a canvas. A few heads tilted. Clara raised an eyebrow. Where each side presents not only facts, but perception, color, contrast, scale. Law is logic, yes, but it's also how the human eye. "Excuse me?" a voice cut through. It was Harvey Dunn, one of the firm's founders, and, more importantly, my father's longtime friend. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. His tone wasn't harsh, but it didn't have to be. "This is a courtroom, not a canvas, Ms. Wren." There was a flicker of amusement in the room. A few people smiled. Clara didn't smile. She smirked. I held my ground. "With respect, Mr. Dunn, the law is about interpretation, how we present arguments, how we frame narratives. It's—" "Spare us the poetic flair," he said, louder this time. "We deal in fact, not feelings. Leave the metaphors for the artists." My chest burned. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, could hear the silence wrap around me like a noose. Clara turned to the crowd and said just loud enough, "Next she'll bring in finger painting for closing arguments." There was laughter. "Software. Cruel." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat locked. My hands trembled at my sides. "Thank you, Ms. Wren," Harvey said, waving dismissively. "Let's proceed." And that was it. My turn was over. I stood there for a second too long before returning to my seat. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. Every eye in the room avoided mine after that. I barely heard the rest of the debate. The clapping at the end was faint. I knew Clara had won before the verdict was even delivered. The applause for her was full and crisp. Mine was a courtesy, nothing more than a slow, quiet burial. On my way out, I passed Harvey in the hall. He gave me a pat on the shoulder. "Stick to what you're good at, Lyra," he said. "Leave the art for your weekend hobbies." I smiled like a good girl, like the one I used to be, the one who stayed silent when her dreams were torn in half over dinner. But inside, something cracked. In the restroom, I locked the door and gripped the edges of the sink. "You let them do it again." That same voice from years ago, the one I'd buried under 1,000 court cases and committee meetings. "You let them mock you. You stood there and took it." I stared into the mirror. My reflection didn't flinch. My father's voice replayed in my head, low and heavy. "Stop trying to be special. Just be good." Back then, I believed him. But this time, I didn't cry. I walked out, got in my car, and drove. Not home, not to anyone, to the studio. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew the space like my own skin. I moved toward the canvas without thinking. No music, no distractions. Just the pounding of my heart and the memory of Clara's smirk. I reached for a brush, dipped it in charcoal gray, then deep red. I painted a courtroom, but it wasn't one anyone would recognize. It was bent and distorted, with faceless judges and a bleeding scale that leaned toward power, not truth. And in the center, a woman without a mouth. I wasn't wrong. I was just in the wrong place to be right. I left the studio after dawn, drained but still wired. My mind spun in 1,000 directions as I drove back across the bridge. The silence in the car was loud, filled with Clara's voice echoing in my head, the patronizing applause, and that canvas, still wet, still screaming. By the time I walked into Ravenhill, I had perfected my face again. Clean, composed. A woman who belonged. A woman who didn't bleed. I was catching up on emails when it happened. My inbox blinked with a new message, something forwarded by accident, or maybe not. The subject line stopped my breath cold. "Uri. Possible media tie between Aurora Knight and one of our associates." I opened it before I could think. It was from the firm's PR consultant to my supervisor. A link to a gossip blog. A short paragraph. A warning. The art world's most elusive talent might not be so anonymous after all. Rumors are swirling that Aurora Knight has connections to the legal elite in Seattle. We've received anonymous tips citing suspicious overlaps in her show dates and a certain associate's absence. investigating further. I froze. My skin went cold. It wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone was coming for me. I clicked out of the email and stood up slowly, legs unsteady. I scanned the room. People typing, answering phones, sipping coffee. Normal, ordinary. But someone in this building, had sold me out. I called Silas on my cell, stepping quickly into an empty office and shutting the door behind me. He answered on the first ring. "Silas, did you see it?" He exhaled hard. "Yeah, it's not good. Who tipped them?" He didn't hesitate. "Anonymous submission, but whoever it is, they did their homework. They cross-referenced Aurora Night exhibit schedules with your firm calendar, canceled hearings, even pulled timestamps from public transportation logs." "What the hell?" "This is surgical, Lyra. Whoever this is, they want you exposed. They want it loud." My heart pounded. There were only a handful of people who could have pulled something like this. Clara. Maybe Josh, though I doubted it. He was careless, not cruel. "I know who I'd bet on," I muttered. Silas was quiet, then said, "You need to start thinking about damage control." This story's not going away on its own. I ended the call and stood in silence, surrounded by frosted glass and the echo of betrayal. An hour later, I saw her in the break room. Clara was pouring coffee, scrolling her phone with one perfectly manicured hand. I walked in without hesitation. "Anything you want to share?" I said, voice flat. She looked up, smiling like I'd just asked for sugar. "Just coffee." I stepped closer. "If this is you, Clara, if you think I won't defend myself, think again." She tilted her head. "Defend yourself from what, exactly? A rumor? A few dots connected by bored bloggers?" I didn't blink. "Try me." Her smile widened. "I'd love to see that." And there it was. No denial, no fear. Just the casual confidence of someone who thought she was holding the gun while I didn't even know I'd been shot. She walked past me slowly, deliberately, her perfume lingering like insult. I stood alone in the break room, heart racing. I had no proof. But I knew. I ignored 3 missed calls from my mother that night. I didn't want to hear another lecture, another veiled comment like, "Well, if you'd just stop trying to live 2 lives, Lyra, maybe one would work." Instead, I drove home and walked straight to the painting from 2 nights ago. The twisted courtroom, the bleeding scale, the silent woman. I picked up the black paint. Without hesitation, I dragged a thick stroke through the center, erasing the scales, drowning the silence. "You want war?" I whispered to the canvas. "You'll get art." If they wanted to uncover me, I'd make damn sure they choked on what they found. But I didn't expect the next move to come from my own side. The call came just after sunrise. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the voice immediately. Silas. "Lyra," he said, voice tight, like he was already bracing for my reaction. "You've been nominated. International Modern Arts Foundation. Top 5 emerging artists under 40. I sat up in bed. The sheets twisted around me like vines. "You're kidding." "I'm not. This is real, career-changing, global press, museum acquisition level serious." The silence on my end stretched, not because I didn't believe him, but because I knew what had to come next. "They want me there," I said. He hesitated. "Yeah, they're asking all 5 nominees to appear, in person. No pseudonyms, no masks. Press, cameras, panel interviews, full exposure." I closed my eyes. "They don't know who I am yet," I whispered. "No," he said. "But they will. It's only a matter of time." I got out of bed, barefoot on cold hardwood, and walked to the kitchen. Poured coffee with a shaking hand. "You could decline," Silas offered gently, "and confirm I'm hiding something." "You are hiding something." I didn't answer. I just stared at the coffee swirling in my cup like it had answers. By mid-morning, the office was humming with louder than usual chatter. I felt it in the way people glanced at me, in how their conversations paused when I passed by. I didn't need confirmation. but I got it anyway. Someone had taped something to the inside of the elevator wall. A photo of Aurora Night. Well, a digitally rendered version. One of those AI-generated portraits of mysterious celebrities. Beside it, a cropped image of me from last year's gala. Underneath, in black Sharpie. Double exposure? I pulled it down, folded it once, and threw it in the trash. I didn't say a word. Not until Arthur Chamberlain, one of the senior partners, called me into his office. He closed the door. Saturday folded his hands. You're aware of the noise surrounding your likeness and this artist. Rumors, I said coolly. Maybe, but you understand the optics. Our clients expect discretion, consistency, not anonymous moonlighting under an alias. He said alias like it was a crime. I didn't flinch. My legal work has never been in question. This firm has a reputation to protect. I leaned forward. So do I. He didn't smile. You'll need to decide which name you want to keep. You can't be both. The room went still. I left without answering. That night, I went to my parents for dinner. The food was warm, the house colder than I remembered. Halfway through roasted chicken and bitter wine, my father spoke. There's chatter at your firm. A girl pretending to be some paint slinger. Pathetic, really? I didn't look up from my plate. And what if she's not pretending? My mother froze mid-sip. My father raised an eyebrow, smirked. Then she doesn't belong in law. There it was, the final line in the sand. The world as he saw it. You're either useful or you're noise. I didn't respond. I just finished eating, thanked them, left. On the walk home, the city blurred. Horns, footsteps, murmurs. I barely noticed any of it. I was lost in a conversation I hadn't finished. With myself. Back in my apartment, I dug out a blank canvas. And I painted. Not for critics, not for galleries, not even for Silas. This one was mine. One side showed a woman in a tailored navy suit, sharp, perfect posture. The other side? The same woman, barefoot, hands streaked with paint, wild eyes, open mouth, split, but standing. I titled it, Split in Two, Standing Whole. If the world needed a name, then I'd give them mine. On my terms, the night came faster than I expected. Or maybe I just stopped running from it. The Seattle Art Museum was electric. People lined up in silk gowns and pressed suits, wine glasses glinting under the chandelier light. Whispers buzzed like bees. Tight, excited, impossible to contain. They say she might show tonight. Do you think she's real? Or just a marketing stunt? Aurora Night. The mystery. The myth I stood behind the curtain, in a dress I had painted by hand. Brushstroke by brushstroke. Sleepless night after sleepless night. It wasn't just fabric, it was armor. My truth stitched in color. Silas found me seconds before showtime. He looked at me like a man standing in the eye of a hurricane. Lyra, you don't have to do this. I smiled at him. I do, and I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. He exhaled. They're out there. Press, critics, gallery owners, everyone who said you couldn't exist without a mask. Let them look, I said. I'm done hiding. The lights dimmed. A hush spread across the gallery floor like a wave receding before the storm. On stage, the museum director stepped up to the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor not just art, but the courage to reveal. For the first time ever, the artist known as Aurora Night will appear in person. Gasps, murmurs, heads turning, then silence. I stepped out. The lights hit me all at once. So did the camera flashes. A dozen bulbs burst like fireworks, painting my face in bursts of white. I didn't flinch. My name, I said into the microphone, voice steady, is Lyra Wren. I am Aurora Night. For a moment, the silence was perfect. Then, shouting, cameras clicking. A woman dropped her wine glass. Someone yelled, "Wait, you're her?" Another, louder, "You can't be both." I raised my chin. Says who? The noise grew louder. Reporters threw questions like darts. How long have you been hiding this? Is your law firm involved? Are your paintings autobiographical? But before I could answer any of them, I saw him. In the very back of the room. My father. Standing alone, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the massive painting behind me. Split in two, standing whole. He hadn't RSVP'd, hadn't returned a single call since that dinner. But there he was, and when our eyes locked, the whole room fell away. He walked forward. Slowly, deliberately. He stopped in front of the painting, studied it for what felt like hours. Then, without looking at me, he said, "So this is what you've been doing behind my back." I didn't hesitate. This is what I've been doing to survive you." His head turned then. His face was unreadable. "You lied." "No," I said. "I protected what was mine." His eyes narrowed. "You've humiliated yourself." My heart beat once, hard. "No," I said, louder now. "I've freed myself." There it was. Not a performance, not an explanation, just truth. I stepped down from the stage, my heels echoing through the stunned silence. I walked through the crowd like I had somewhere better to be. Because I did. Outside, the air was cold, clean, alive. I didn't look back. Let them call it a scandal. I called it liberation. But the cost of liberation has a way of showing up the very next morning, dressed in a suit, clutching paperwork. I arrived at Ravenhill to find a terse email waiting in my inbox. Emergency meeting, 9 a.m. boardroom. No subject, no details. I didn't need them. The boardroom was glass-walled, but emotionally bulletproof. Inside sat Arthur Chamberlain, 2 HR reps I barely knew, and legal counsel for the firm. On the table in front of them was a printed article. Lawyer by day, artist by night. The double life of Lyra Wren. A photo of me at the Seattle Art Museum stood frozen on the cover, flanked by camera flashes and the words scandal, identity, ethics. Arthur didn't smile. He didn't offer me a seat. "You've left us with no alternative," he said flatly. I sat anyway. One of the HR women slid a folder toward me. Neat, heavy, final. Arthur folded his hands. "We're all very impressed with your creative success, but this firm has built its reputation over decades of consistency, discretion, and alignment." I stared at the headline. I didn't touch the folder. "You've put us in a compromised position. Clients are calling. Some are reconsidering representation. We can't have confusion about where your loyalties lie." I raised my eyebrows. "So, what exactly are you asking me to do?" His tone never changed. "You must issue a formal statement disassociating yourself from the Aurora Knight persona. A full retraction, or you may resign. Effective immediately." "And if I do neither?" Arthur's jaw tensed. "Then we will terminate the partnership." The HR rep added gently, like she thought I might cry. "We're not punishing you, Lyra. We're protecting our brand." I laughed once, sharp and tired. "No, you're punishing my freedom." The legal counsel leaned forward. "The waiver is standard. You'll agree not to discuss the firm in the press, and in return, we'll classify your departure as voluntary, clean." I looked at the papers, then at each of their faces. Not one of them saw me. Not really. Just a name on a door. A liability. I stood. "Do you want to know the real scandal?" I said, my voice calm. "It's that I gave this firm everything I had, except the parts of me you never deserved." Arthur didn't reply. I left the folder on the table. No signature, just a name they could no longer control. I walked through the halls of Ravenhill one last time. My box was light, just a few files, a mug, and a plant I'd already forgotten to water. Some associates looked away. A few whispered. One even muttered, "Guess being famous doesn't pay rent." Clara stood by the elevators, sipping coffee with that same smug curve to her lips. She didn't say anything, neither did I. But as the elevator doors closed, I looked at her. "I gave you everything. I said, just loud enough. But not all of me. That was your mistake. By the time I reached the parking garage, I wasn't crying. I was burning. I drove straight to my studio. No detours, no music, just rage. Focused, pure. I threw on a smock and didn't bother cleaning the dried paint on my arms from 2 nights ago. I grabbed a canvas, the biggest one I had, and pinned it to the wall. Then I picked up a brush and started without sketching, without rules. I painted a woman in a dark suit, no mouth again. But this time, her hands weren't bound. They were painting the walls around her. The walls looked like courtrooms, offices, boardrooms, and the walls were cracking. I called it gag order. It wasn't subtle, but then again, neither was betrayal. By the time I dropped the brush, I was shaking. But not weak, never that. They wanted me to choose, so I chose the truth, even if it cost me the world they built. But now that the fight had settled, what was left? The gallery buzz had quieted. The press had moved on to newer scandals. Even the hate mail slowed down. I'd won my right to exist on my own terms. Yet, beneath the victory, there was still this hollow ache that pulsed like a bruise. One evening, without thinking, I found myself driving through the old neighborhood, the one with the trimmed hedges and the forced smiles. I didn't call ahead. The porch light was off, but the kitchen window glowed softly. I knocked twice. My mother answered, wearing the same pearl earrings she always did when she wanted to seem more composed than she felt. "Lyra," she said, blinking, "you should have called." "Would you have let me in?" She didn't answer that. Just opened the door wider. The house looked the same. Too clean, too quiet. Like it was trying too hard to forget the people who lived in it. "He's not here," she said, leading me into the kitchen. "He's been distant." I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "Is that your way of saying he regrets it, or that he's pretending it never happened?" She looked away. "You humiliated him." I freed myself. She winced at that, and I didn't apologize. Dinner was offered. I declined. Conversation stayed shallow. "How's the weather? Have I been eating? Is the art selling?" She didn't mention the gallery show, didn't ask about the paintings. I stood after 20 minutes. "I just wanted you to see me," I said, walking toward the door. "Why now?" "Because it's quieter now," I said, opening the door. "And sometimes that's the only time we actually hear anything." She didn't say goodbye. Back at the studio, I sat cross-legged in the middle of the floor, surrounded by canvases in various stages of chaos. None of them called to me. I picked up a brush anyway, not because I had something to say, but because silence is a language too. I didn't put on music, didn't pour wine. I just let my hand move, like muscle memory. Color bled into form. Form softened into rhythm. Hours passed. When I stepped back, I didn't even know what I'd painted. I didn't feel better, but I wasn't numb. That was enough. 3 days later, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope. No return address. Handwritten, neat, familiar. I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no greeting, no date. "I don't understand the world you chose, but I finally understand why you had to choose it. I was wrong to believe my way was the only way. You didn't betray us. We betrayed you first." There was no signature, just that. I stared at the words for a long time. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it did. Because some part of me had been waiting for this for years and didn't know what to do with it now that it was real. I didn't call him, didn't frame the letter or tear it up. I tucked it between 2 pages of an old sketchbook and left it there. Not forgotten, not forgiven, just left. That night, I returned to my canvas. I painted something quiet. A man standing in shadow, one hand reaching toward a girl wrapped in light. No faces, no names, just the gesture. I called it almost. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something softer than silence. A year passed like mist. I didn't mark the days with court filings or canvas deadlines anymore. My life no longer lived in halves. I wasn't Lyra at 9 and Aurora at midnight. I was just me, both, neither, more. The invitation went out on a Tuesday. You are cordially invited to Two Names, One Life, a solo exhibition by Lyra Wren, formerly known as Aurora Knight. Beneath that, one simple line. Come see what remains when a life is told whole. The gallery was small, local, no international press, no Fashion Week collectors. Just wood floors, white walls, and the truth. Mine. I stood near the door as people trickled in. Familiar faces, unfamiliar eyes. Some knew me as the fiery debater from law school, others as the ghost painter who refused to be photographed. Some didn't know who I was at all. That was the beauty of it. Silas stood at my side, grinning like a proud brother. You nervous? Not anymore, I said. I already lived the worst of it. This part is easy. When it came time to speak, I didn't use a mic. The space was intimate. My voice didn't need to be loud to carry. I used to think I had to choose, I told the crowd. Be a daughter or an artist, a lawyer or a rebel. Wear the mask or break it. I looked around, at canvases titled Gag Order, Almost, Split in Two, Standing Whole. But healing doesn't come from breaking things, it comes from becoming whole. This is what it looks like when you stop asking for permission to be yourself. They clapped, not loud, but honest. Later that night, I wandered the floor. My old law professor stopped me. His eyes were glassy. I always wondered why your arguments felt lyrical, he said. Now I know. Even Josh, my former assistant, showed up. He hugged me too long and said, Your paintings punch harder than your depositions ever did. But the biggest surprise? Arthur Chamberlain, standing by gag order, hands in his pockets. You cost us a headline scandal, he said without preamble. I raised an eyebrow. And, he added, you taught the firm something. About courage, about the value of not fitting inside the damn mold. I almost smiled. Almost. At the very end of the night, I spotted him. My father. He stood in the back, near the exit. He didn't come forward, didn't speak, but he stayed. He looked at Almost for a long time, his face unreadable, arms at his sides, not folded like they always were in judgment. And when the lights dimmed, he was still there. He nodded once when I passed him. That was all. It was more than enough. In the months that followed, I started teaching a few classes at a community art school, just part-time, just enough to remind me that creation isn't always solitary. I also launched a small foundation, modest, private, quiet, for kids like me, the ones told that their dreams were distractions, that their gifts were impractical. I didn't tell them to rebel, I told them to become whole. The gallery kept one piece at the front entrance, a mirror, framed in walnut, etched with my handwriting. Your story doesn't need permission to be yours. Sometimes I'd catch people reading it with their hands on their chests, like something had landed deep inside. That's what I wanted all along. Not applause, not revenge, just understanding. Back at my studio one evening, I found the painting I had sworn I'd never touch again. My father's verdict. It was still jagged, still raw. A courtroom filled with red. A scale bent toward silence. I didn't repaint it. I just added one thing. My signature. My real name. I was never hiding. I was just waiting for the world to catch up. And if you're still watching, maybe something in my story resonated with yours. I used to believe success meant fitting in, that to be loved, I had to choose one version of myself and silence the rest. But I've learned something far more powerful. Wholeness isn't about choosing between your truths. It's about claiming all of them, even the ones that don't make sense to anyone else. Maybe you're watching this right now, feeling stuck in a life someone else chose for you. Maybe you've buried a dream so deep you don't even say it out loud anymore. I've been there, and I can promise you, there is no peace in pretending, only pressure, only performance. The real power begins the day you stop apologizing for who you are. You don't need to burn your life down to start over. Sometimes all it takes is one brushstroke of honesty. So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you were living two lives just to survive? Have you ever been told you had to choose between your passion and your obligations? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this video hit you somewhere real, type 1 in the chat. Or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't, that's okay too. Tell me why. Let's talk about it. And if you want more stories like this, true, raw, human stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next chapter. You're not alone, not anymore. And your story? It matters. Hi there, I'm Avon. At Christmas, my sister stood up, clinked her glass, and said, "We voted and cut you off." Everyone nodded, smiled, like it was nothing. But the part no one saw? The years they drained my bank account behind closed doors. The therapy I paid for, the wedding I funded, the hospital scare that turned out to be a lie. And just when I finally walked away, they came back, asking for help. How did I go from being not family to being their only lifeline? You ever wonder what happens when you stop being the family fixer and start being the one who says enough? Let me show you. I showed up with a bottle of Cabernet, one of the nice ones from my stash. I even wrapped it with a bow like an idiot, like I believed this year would be different. The porch light at Rosen's place flickered once as I rang the bell. The smell of pine and cinnamon hit me as the door creaked open and Mom's voice carried through the hallway. "Avon's here," she sang out, fake cheer dripping off every syllable. Inside, the house looked like a Hallmark card. Warm lights, crackling fire, the whole thing. Neva was by the tree, shaking a box with her name on it. My father didn't bother getting up from the recliner. Rosine smiled like we were on camera. "You're early," she said. "Must be nice having no kids and no real responsibilities." I smiled politely and placed the wine on the table. "Better early than dramatic," I said, trying to sound playful, but she didn't laugh. Dinner was already set. Carved ham, roasted vegetables, perfectly folded napkins. Rosen always knew how to stage a picture-perfect disaster. I took my seat near the end of the table. Small talk buzzed like a bad radio station. Static, tension, half-hearted chuckles. No one asked how I'd been. No one mentioned my promotion last quarter. It was clear they were just waiting for something. And then it happened. Rosine stood up, wineglass in hand, wearing that lipstick she only used when she wanted to win. "Before we cut the pie," she said, "I think it's time we got honest." I looked up. My stomach turned before she even finished the sentence. She glanced around the table like a smug senator. "We voted, and we've decided you're no longer part of this family." I blinked. At first, I thought I misheard her, or maybe she was joking. But Mom nodded in agreement. "It was bound to happen sooner or later," she said, buttering her roll. Cale stared at his plate, silent. Tolliver clinked his fork against his wineglass. "It's for your own good." Neva giggled. She thought it was a game. And my dad? He didn't even meet my eyes. Just shifted in his chair and muttered, "This kind of tension isn't healthy." I felt like I had left my body. Their words didn't pierce me like knives. It was colder than that, like standing outside in a storm with no coat, no one coming to let you in. I stayed quiet for a moment, forcing myself to breathe. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a thick folder. Their laughter stopped. The sound it made when I set it on the table was sharp. Paper meeting wood, with a dull thump that cut deeper than any curse. "What's that?" Rosine asked, the smirk twitching at the corners of her mouth. I leaned back. "Since we're being honest, I figured I'd come prepared." She grabbed it like she expected confetti to fly out. Her fingers flipped through the pages, one by one. The smile drained from her face. Bank transfers. Receipts. Email screenshots. A list of every time they called, texted, begged. A timeline that screamed what I'd swallowed for years. Then she hit page 23. A hotel bill from Charleston. 2 nights. 1 room. Signed with her name and someone else's. Lena. She shoved the folder away like it was covered in filth. "You psychopath," she hissed. "You've been spying?" I didn't flinch. "Number I've been documenting. There's a difference." Cale pulled the folder toward him, started reading. His mouth moved, but no words came out. My mother finally said, "How dare you weaponize your help like this?" I looked at her, calm now, colder than I'd ever felt. "You called it help, but to you, I was an ATM, a therapist, a guilt sponge." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I held my ground. "You said I wasn't family?" I scanned the faces around the table. "Then maybe you won't need your fallback anymore." No one spoke. Rosine's glass tilted in her hand. Neva asked if we were still playing the game. I walked to the door, grabbing my coat. No tears, no begging, no second chances. Just me, and the storm I finally let them feel. Thunder rumbled in the distance as I stepped outside, the cold air hitting harder than I expected. The door didn't slam behind me. It clicked shut, almost polite, like even the house was too tired to argue. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Let them sit in the silence they carved. The door clicked shut behind me, but their voices bled through the walls. I didn't stop walking, not down the steps, not across the yard. My boots crunched the frost-covered grass like it owed me something. I made it halfway to the street when I heard her. "You think you're better than us?" Rosen's voice shrill and shaking. "That folder proves you're just obsessive, sick." I didn't turn around, but I heard the folder hit the wall inside, pages scattering like fire and dry grass. "You're a damn parasite, Avon!" she screamed. Then silence. Then Cale. "Who the hell is Lena?" That stopped me. I turned just slightly, enough to see him standing near the dining room window, the folder in his hand now. His eyes weren't just scanning. They were searching, digging. "Don't do this here," Rosen snapped, but her voice had lost its edge. I said, "Who is Lena?" Cale didn't shout. He never had to. His voice just dropped low and steady, like a threat with a tie on. My mother stood up suddenly. "This isn't the time or the place." "The hell it isn't," Cale shot back. "You all wanted honesty. You all clapped. Now we're being honest." I leaned against the mailbox and listened as my sister's perfect night unraveled. "She's a friend," Rosine muttered. Cale read another line aloud. "3 nights, Ocean View Suite, Charleston, signed under your joint account, Rosine Adams and Lena Quinn." "A friend, huh?" "She was helping me with a project." "Stop! Just stop!" His voice broke, just enough for me to hear the betrayal sink in. "You lied to me, and you lied to her." I didn't need to watch the rest. I knew that tone. It was the sound of a marriage unraveling in real time. No fireworks, just the quiet crack of trust splitting open. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, fingers trembling, not from the cold. A new voicemail, unknown number. I pressed play. "Ms. Adams, this is Ewan from Marlowe and Fisher. Your father asked me to reach out regarding the family trust. He said you recently revoked certain authorizations. He'd like to discuss fallback options." I hung up. Another call came through immediately, same number. "Ms. Adams," Ewan said again when I answered. "Sorry to catch you like this. Your father insisted I contact you. He's under the impression that you're still listed on several fallback clauses as power of attorney." "Not anymore," I replied flatly. "I signed off. It was finalized." "Well," Ewan continued, "he claims that unless you manually update Clause 14b through a separate filing, some assets still default through you. He's asking for a meeting." I laughed. A short, sharp exhale that wasn't amused in the slightest. "Tell him I don't hold that power anymore, and even if I did, I wouldn't lift a finger." "Understood," he said. "Would you like us to notify him in writing?" "No," I said. "Let him stew." I ended the call and stared at the quiet street. A few houses down, someone had one of those plastic reindeer sets lit up. The red nose blinked on and off like it was mocking me. Behind me, the house had gone still again. Not peaceful, just stunned. I took one last look and then walked. Not because I needed air, because staying would have meant seeing their faces after the truth scorched through their lies, and I'd already spent a lifetime swallowing ash. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My breath came even, and I knew, as sure as I knew my name, that they didn't break me tonight. They just proved me right. I didn't have a destination, just distance. Distance from that house, from them, from the wreckage of what used to pass for family. I kept walking until the cold sobered the last of the adrenaline, until the sting in my chest dulled to something I could carry. Then I got in the car, started driving, not toward anything, just away. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove without thinking, past neighborhoods still glowing with lights, through old streets where the pavement cracked in the same places it always had. My tires eventually found their way to the gravel shoulder by the lake, Dad's favorite spot back when I was too young to understand what peace actually meant. The water looked like glass under the moonlight. Not a ripple, not a breeze. Just stillness. I cut the engine and let the silence settle around me like a second skin. I used to come here when I needed clarity, before job deadlines and overdraft notices, before they learned I could be counted on for everything, and punished for the same reason. I leaned back in the driver's seat and stared at the black expanse ahead. The cold crept in through the cracked window, but I didn't roll it up. My mind didn't drift far before it landed right back on them. Not tonight, not Christmas, but every single time they asked, and I said yes. There was the time Dad called at 6:12 a.m. "Just a little help, honey. The dental work wasn't covered after all." He said it like I'd offered first. Then came Mom's bill for a card I didn't open, for items I'd never seen. "Just this once," she'd whispered, like it was a secret between friends. Rosen's emergency therapy turned out to be energy healing with a life coach in California. I wired the money without asking, thinking maybe it was real. Maybe she really was in trouble. Then came the tuition fees for Neva. "We wouldn't ask," Senna said over the phone, "but the scholarship didn't come through, and you know how tight things are." No one offered to pay anything back. No one ever asked if I could afford it. The gratitude when it came was hollow, wrapped in guilt and expectation. "Only you can help. You're the smart one. You have a good job, we don't." It always ended the same way, with my bank account lighter, my breath shorter, and my silence mistaken for consent. Once, at a birthday party for Neva, I brought a book as a gift, something I'd loved as a child. Rosin looked at it, then at me, and muttered, "I guess we all give what we can." They used to tell me I was the backbone of the family. I didn't realize they meant the one carrying all the weight until I couldn't stand upright anymore. I blinked, snapping back to the present, still gripping the steering wheel with both hands. My phone lit up again. This time it was a memory, 3 years ago. A photo of Dad in a hospital bed, looking pitiful and pale. The caption from Mom read, "We're at the ER. Don't know how long he has. Please come." I remembered flying home that day, canceling meetings, moving a project deadline, rushing straight from the airport to the hospital in heels. I'd expected machines, beeping monitors, maybe an IV. Instead, I found him watching a football game and complaining about the soup being cold. "Oh, they were just being cautious," Mom said with a wave of her hand. "Better safe than sorry, right?" Safe. Sure. I remember sitting in the waiting room afterward, staring at the vending machine and realizing that my emergency was never really their emergency. I was the emergency contact, the fixer, the backup plan, not the daughter, never the daughter. I turned off my phone and stepped out of the car, walking down the worn path to the edge of the lake. The wind cut across the water, numbing my face. I didn't care. For the first time all night, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. "They never needed me," I whispered into the dark. "They needed what I could give." And I gave too much. 3 days passed like breath held too long. I barely left my apartment, except to walk the dog, and pretend normalcy still lived in my building. Asheville had turned bitterly cold, the kind that cracked your skin and crept into your bones, even when wrapped in wool. The lake hadn't offered answers, but at least it hadn't asked anything of me. Then Senna texted, "Let's meet, just us, no pressure." I stared at the message longer than I should have. My first instinct was to delete it. My second was to ask, "What do you want now?" But curiosity, fool that it is, won. I chose a public place, a tiny cafe tucked on the quieter end of downtown. No risk of a scene, no audience from family, just two sisters playing pretend in a setting too cozy for confrontation. She was already there when I arrived, bundled in a cream coat, hands around a latte that had lost its steam. She looked up, eyes soft. Too soft. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. I sat across from her without taking off my scarf. "Let's not waste time." Senna smiled tightly. "Okay. Look, about Christmas." That wasn't what it looked like. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Did someone hack your voice and make you say I wasn't family?" She flinched, just slightly. It was heat of the moment. People were emotional. Rosin was pushing hard, and you went along with it, I finished. Senna didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. My stomach turned. "What is that?" I asked, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. She slid it across the table. "It's paperwork, legal stuff, power of attorney documents. Dad wants to reinstate you. We figured maybe if we handled this first, we could talk easier." I didn't touch it. "So this is what you meant by no pressure?" I said, voice flat. "Avon, we're all tired," she whispered. "You've always been the capable one. You understand how these things work. We're scared." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You don't get to cut me out and then put me back in when it's convenient." Senna looked away. "It's not like that." I pushed the envelope back toward her. "It's exactly like that. You all clapped when Rosin made her little speech. You toasted to my absence. And now, what? You're here because Dad's scared of losing control of the trust fund?" She didn't answer. "I'm not your legal shield anymore," I said, standing, "and I'm definitely not your emotional one." I left her sitting there, staring at the untouched folder, latte, now completely cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed once. It was a message from Kale. "I owe you an apology. I saw what Rosine was doing for years, and I said nothing. I told myself staying quiet was neutral. It wasn't. It made it worse." Another message followed. "You weren't crazy. You were just alone." I stared at the screen, stunned. Kale had always been silent, detached. Switzerland in every family feud. But now, this? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Thank you." I typed it, then deleted it. I locked my phone and lay there, eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling, mind running loops. The silence in the room felt louder after Kale's messages. And just as I was starting to make sense of that shift, the screen lit up again. The sun wasn't even up when my phone lit up again. Rosine. No greeting, no punctuation, just, "You've gone too far. If something happens to Mom or Dad, it's on you." I stared at the screen for a full minute, waiting for something else. Context, clarification, even a fake apology. Nothing came. Just that one line. Threat dressed as concern. A sentence so sharp it could slit guilt wide open if I let it. I didn't reply. Instead, I padded into the kitchen, flipped on the light, and poured myself a cup of coffee that tasted like metal. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the pressure building just under my skin. By the time I placed the mug on the table, a hairline crack had already formed in the ceramic. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted a reset button. They wanted the version of me that shut up and paid up, that smiled through insults, that kept peace by erasing myself. But I was no longer that version. By 9 a.m., I'd typed out a message to the family group chat 5 different ways. Deleted every draft. None of them felt like enough. Until I hit record. My voice didn't shake this time. "I am not your villain," I said. "I am your consequence." I let that sit for a second before continuing. For years, I stayed silent because I thought keeping the family together mattered more than telling the truth. I absorbed the jabs, the manipulation, the financial sinkhole you all made out of me. I justified it in my head, told myself you were struggling, but I see it now. You weren't struggling, you were feeding off me. I paused. I won't play the scapegoat anymore, and if you try to smear me, threaten me, or twist this back on me, I will go public, with everything, every receipt, every recording, every document in that folder and more. I'm not bluffing. I ended the message and pressed send. No dramatics, just clarity. The silence that followed was almost loud. 2 hours later, my phone pinged again. It was Branwen. I didn't know it was that bad. At first, I assumed she meant someone else. Then came another message. "I'm sorry for clapping. I thought it was, I don't know, a show, like it wasn't real." Then another. "Rosen said if I didn't support the vote, I was choosing sides, and Mom told me you'd already decided to leave." I felt cornered. I reread those lines 3 times. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest thing I'd gotten in years that didn't come laced with an ask. "If you want me to speak out, I will." I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't ready to trust her again. But something in me softened, just a notch. That night, I sat at my kitchen table alone, with nothing but my breath and the ticking of the thermostat. My hands shook, not from fear, from release, from the relief of having finally spoken, of finally being heard. I whispered it to the quiet, just to hear it out loud. Maybe I was never the quiet one. Maybe they just never listened. The next morning, I woke to silence, but it felt different. Emptier, not heavier. I moved on instinct, boxing up the pieces of a life I no longer owed anyone. There wasn't a plan, just momentum. Like once the words had left my mouth, everything else had to follow. The last box landed with a dull thud near the coat closet. I didn't bother labeling anything anymore. Just shuffled the essentials into drawers, closed the cabinets, and breathed in the blankness of the new apartment. No family portraits, no heirlooms, no framed cross-stitches saying, "Home is where the heart is." Just walls. Clean. Silent. I'd signed the lease 3 days after the blow-up and finalized every severance I could think of. New emergency contacts, no shared financial ties, legal notices filed and documented. I changed passwords, moved accounts, even scrubbed Dad's name off the trust backups they thought I wouldn't catch. I'd missed nothing this time. On the kitchen counter, folded neatly, was an old red sweater, one Mom had given me during a particularly awkward Christmas years ago. It had gold-threaded snowflakes and a little stitched tag inside that read, "Love you always." That same year, she'd called me selfish for not co-signing a loan for Tolliver. I donated it to a shelter on my way to the grocery store. My phone buzzed. I opened the family thread one last time and typed, "My number stays the same, but you'll never reach who I used to be." Then I blocked them all. Every last one. I didn't expect silence to feel like safety, but it did. For 3 days, nothing came. Then the messages started again, but this time from new numbers. The first was a photo. Their living room. The usual tree. Same placement. But there was a gaping hole where presents used to be stacked. "It doesn't feel the same without you. Neva cried all night," Senna wrote. 10 minutes later, another one. "We're behind on the mortgage. You don't care anymore, do you?" Rosin. Then Tolliver, of all people. "We all said things we regret. But you went nuclear. Why would you do this to your own family?" None of them said sorry. None of them asked how I was doing. They just pointed fingers, draped in concern, as if their discomfort was my crime. I stood at my new kitchen window, the city lights dimming behind mountain fog, and let the texts pile up like junk mail I'd never open. Then I poured a glass of wine. No holiday glassware this time, just a clean tumbler, and stepped out onto the balcony. The cold didn't bother me tonight, No music played, no messages popped in, and for once, no voice inside me asked if I'd gone too far. They didn't want me healed, they wanted me manageable, and I finally understood the difference. A few nights later, the cold started to feel familiar, almost welcome. I sat on the balcony longer than usual, watching the lights from the neighboring building flicker on and off. Somewhere, a dog barked twice, and then nothing. I liked that kind of quiet, the kind where no one needed anything from me. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lila Harmon. We hadn't spoken in over 10 years. College friends turned Facebook background noise. "Hey, sorry to ask, but are you okay? I heard you were going through something. Rosen messaged me. Said you might be in a dark place. Wanted to make sure you're safe." I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and locked. So this was her new game. I opened Messenger. Another one. And another. People I hadn't talked to in ages, some from high school, others from a job I'd left long ago. All with eerily similar messages. She said you've been isolating, that you might be overwhelmed. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. It's okay to not be okay. Each one came with a sickly sweet tone, wrapped in concern, but dipped in judgment. This wasn't worry. This was a campaign. A few hours later, the smoke turned to fire. A vague post went up on Facebook, written by a woman named Andrea, someone I'd worked with years ago on a nonprofit project, now a casual acquaintance at best. "We need to talk more about mental health, especially when people lash out, cut off their families, and claim victimhood while causing chaos." It didn't name me. It didn't have to. 3 comments down, a mutual friend tagged my name. Then someone else dropped a screenshot. An out-of-context text I'd sent Senna months ago. "I'm not sure I can keep doing this with them. It's exhausting." That one word, exhausting, was all they needed to spin a new story. That I was unstable, emotionally fragile, dangerous. The whispers came next, in direct messages, in subposts, in the language of polite cruelty. "She used to be so sweet, now she's cold." "It's the holidays. Who cuts off their family at Christmas? Maybe she needs help." Then a comment from Aunt Faye, who hadn't spoken to me since I was a teenager. "We should all just pray for her." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I opened my laptop instead and started drafting a public response. Something sharp, articulate, laced with proof. But halfway through, I stopped typing. What was the point? They weren't looking for answers. They were just looking for control. So I called my lawyer. By the end of the day, Rosen received a formal cease and desist notice. Attached were screenshots, message logs, and a warning that any further defamation would be met with legal consequences. No more phone calls, no more folder drops. This time, I spoke in their language. That night, as the final email was sent, I whispered to myself, "You're not winning. You're gasping." And the silence that followed? It told me she heard. The silence didn't last long. 2 days after I sent the cease and desist, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp raps, followed by nothing. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole, heart tightening. It was Branwen. She stood there with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a tote that looked like it had been hastily packed. Her face was blotchy, eyes swollen, mascara smudged. No smile, just exhaustion. "I'm sorry for showing up like this," she said as I opened the door. I stepped aside without asking. She walked in slowly, like her limbs were heavy. I didn't speak, not yet. I just waited. She stood in the middle of my living room for a moment, then finally whispered, "I can't stay with them anymore. It's poisoned, all of it." I nodded once, then locked the door behind her. We sat down side by side on the couch, like old friends who forgot how to start over. It was a long time before she spoke again. "I should have said something sooner," Branwen murmured. "But after I messaged you, Rosen found out." I looked at her, my chest tightening. "She cornered me in the kitchen," she continued, her voice shaking. "Said if I ever contacted you again, she'd cut me off completely. Told me I was choosing a traitor." Then Mom chimed in. said loyalty meant silence. Branwen paused, eyes glassy. I don't think I ever realized how deep it went. The control. The fear. Yeah, I said softly. It's easy not to see it until you're the target. She looked at me then. Really looked. Kale left. He's staying at a friend's place. He told me Rosen tried to push him to write a statement about your mental instability. He refused. My throat burned. Branwen reached into her bag and handed me a folded piece of paper. A printed email. A full thread of messages. From Senna. From Rosen. Each one nastier than the last. Gaslighting, threats, manipulation. You were right, she said. About everything. And I'm done pretending too. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those words until they left her lips. Later that night, another message came in from Rosen. You turned her against us. Just like you poisoned everything. I didn't hesitate. You did that all by yourself. Then I blocked her. Phone, email, every platform. I opened a document I'd been sitting on for weeks. A formal affidavit in support of Kale's divorce filing. I signed it, scanned it, sent it to his lawyer. Done. Branwen and I sat on the balcony that evening, the sky bruised with January cold. I brought her a blanket. She didn't thank me with words, just tucked it around herself and leaned back in the chair beside mine. We didn't talk. We didn't need to, because for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like peace. You're safe here, I said after a while. For real this time. She nodded, exhaling slow. And I realized quietly that maybe I was safe too. 2 weeks later, I found the letter in my mailbox, tucked between a utilities bill and a coupon booklet. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in a familiar, tilted script that stopped me cold. I stood there on the steps outside my building, fingers tightening around the envelope. My first instinct was to toss it. Trash can was only 6 steps away. But something in me said, read it. Not for them. For me. I walked upstairs, placed it on the counter, stared at it for an hour while the tea water cooled. Then I sat, opened the flap carefully, and unfolded the first page. We miss you, every day. No apology, no admission. Just that line, scripted in my mother's loopy cursive. Page 2. Your father hasn't been well. His breathing's gotten worse. And Neva. She keeps asking when you're coming back. She drew you a picture. A pang, not a sharp one. Just the kind that brushes against old bruises. Then the third page. We might lose the house. The mortgage is too far behind. We just need a little help. After that, we'll never ask again. Please, Alvain. That line, we'll never ask again, was underlined twice. I read all 3 pages once more. Then I folded them up, stood, and carried the letter outside. On the balcony, I pulled out the ceramic bowl I used to keep succulents in, set the letter inside, lit a match. The paper curled fast, black edges folding in on themselves, ink bleeding into orange flame. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel sad. I watched the smoke rise, soft and thin, vanishing into the sky, and whispered, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. There was something final in that moment. Not like slamming a door, more like taking the key off your ring and tossing it into a river. Later that night, I found an old emergency contact form I'd left half-filled in a drawer. I pulled it out, crossed off every old name, wrote in my own, me, finally, me. A few days after that, Branwen asked me if I could walk Neva to school. She had a shift and didn't want to leave her daughter with a sitter. I agreed without thinking. It wasn't an obligation, it was a choice. Neva held my hand the whole walk, skipping every third step. When we got to the gate, she looked up at me with that soft, curious stare only kids can manage. Will I see you at my birthday? She asked. I smiled, crouching down so we were eye level. Only if I'm invited. She nodded, then ran toward her class. I stood there for a minute, just watching her disappear into a crowd of color and chatter. When I turned to head home, the clouds were finally breaking, sunlight threading through the gray, slow, and golden. And for once, the end didn't feel like a collapse. It felt like a clearing. Maybe you've been the one keeping it all together. Maybe you've stayed silent to keep the peace, until you realized the silence was costing you your peace. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice. That being the strong one meant absorbing every blow, cleaning up every mess, carrying the weight without ever asking for help. But here's what I learned. Being strong isn't about how much you can endure. It's about knowing when enough is enough. It's about choosing yourself, without apology. Sometimes family won't understand your boundaries, because they were the ones who benefited from you not having any. And when you finally draw that line, they'll call it betrayal. But it's not. It's healing. I don't share this story to be dramatic. I share it for anyone who's ever felt guilty for walking away, for saying no, for protecting their peace. You are not selfish for outgrowing dysfunction. You are not heartless for demanding respect. And you are not alone. So, let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between peace and people? Between protecting your boundaries and preserving a relationship? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Just type 1 if this story hit home, or let me know what city or state you're watching from. I read every comment, seriously. And if this video gave you something to think about, maybe strength, maybe a little clarity, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Because trust me, you're not the only one rebuilding, and you deserve to write your next chapter your way.